Here we go. Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the City Council meeting for May 3rd, 2010 to order. First thing on the agenda is always is roll call and determination of a quorum. Amber, if you would, please.
Waugh. Martinson. Here. Quaker.
Here.
Costello. LaCroix.
Here.
Chapman. Olson. Here. Weifenbach. Here. Kroger. Here. Hadcock. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, everyone. Just a couple of reminders. First of all, if you have a cell phone or a pager, if you would please turn that to the vibrate or off mode. We would certainly appreciate it. Also, if you wish to speak to any item on the agenda tonight, we do have speaker request forms. They look like this. They're to your left or right over on the media table. If you'd please fill that up with your name and also the item. So as we make our way down the agenda, we'll make sure that we do not overlook you. Please keep in mind that both during the open public comment period and also during the typical public comment periods throughout the agenda, we do time those to 3 minutes each. And with that, if everyone would please rise for our invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Dale Barchard, and he is an area pastor.
Let's pray. Almighty God, tonight we stand here in this place linked by the power of prayer. Help us to be, to think, to act what is right because it is right. Make us truthful, honest, and honorable in all things. Give us the ability to be charitable, forgiving, and patient with our fellow men and women. Help us to understand their motives and their shortcomings, even as you, Lord, understand ours. We pray today for our nation's leaders. Give them the wisdom to know what is right and the courage to do it. We pray for refreshing spring rains to replenish the earth. We pray for those individuals and businesses in our community who are caught in the turmoil of this economic tough time. Lord, tonight we would ask your will prevail in this city council meeting. Consistently replenish these city council members and staff with strength and courage, so often drained by the pressure and the stress of the day. We ask all this in the name of the one who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, the Lord our God. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Next thing, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any items to be added to the agenda? Mr. Preston.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add two items, if I could, under items from the staff. First item would be report on the petition submitted on April 30th, 2010 regarding Ordinance 5591 titled An Ordinance Established in Downtown Business Improvement District.
Okay, we'll call that 114A. And your second item?
Second item would be direction on setting an election regarding the referral of Ordinance 5591.
Okay, we'll call that 114B.
Thank you.
Any additional items to be added to the agenda? Please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add an item 113A, and we'll call it report on historical marker for Skyline Drive on Hangman's Hill.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional items? Please turn on your light. If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the agenda as published with the addition of 113A, 114A, and 114B. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to the approval of the minutes, and the chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes from the April 19, 2010 regular council meeting and the April 27, 2010 special council meeting. Do we have a second, please? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to awards and recognitions. I'm going to come down front, and we do have a special proclamation and a couple of awards. And I'll ask Mr. Rosen to come on up, if you would, please. Once a year, we have the privilege of recognizing the efforts of those that are passionate about historic preservation. So please let me read this executive proclamation, which reads, whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth and stability and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while embracing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both rural and urban, for all Americans of all ages, all walks of life and backgrounds. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has helped shape us as a people. And whereas old is the new green is the theme of the National Preservation Month of 2010 by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Now, therefore, I, Alan Hanks, Mayor of the City of Rapid City, do hereby proclaim May 2010 as Historic Preservation Month. Now, having said that, we also have a couple acknowledgments and awards we'd like to give out. And let me just read this very quickly. Each year, as part of the Historic Preservation Month, the City of Rapid City and the Rapid City Historic Preservation Commission recognize outstanding preservation projects by presenting awards to individuals who contribute to outstanding excellence in historic preservation, the rehabilitation and restoration. And this year, we're very pleased to award 2 such awards, and these awards are called the Norman E. Nelson Preservation Awards. The first one, and I'll ask Nancy Troutman to come up, and she will be representing the Pennington County Commissioners. And the first one is for the work that was done at the Pennington County Courthouse, and accepting that, there again is Nancy. I'm going to let you, Pat, why don't you say a few words as far as why this project was chosen?
I'm the chairman of the president of the Rapid City Historic Preservation Commission. We appreciate what the Pennington County Commission is doing to restore the beautiful courthouse we have here in town. And we just like to recognize those who are in charge and who are leading the leading the charge, I guess, to get the courthouse restored back to its near original state. And we really grateful to you, and we'll give you this award to you for that reason. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Well, first of all, thank you very much on behalf of the Pennington County Commission. This was something we all agreed on, and that's really a great thing. Anytime you go into the courthouse, it's such a wonderful old building. It just kind of settles in your heart, and you just like it, and you love it. And we certainly all do that work there and that serve there, and we just really appreciate being recognized for this. It was a work of love and the right thing to do. Thank you.
The second award we have tonight is for Lauren and Roberta. Is it Siemens? Did I get that close? Simons, very good. Why don't you go ahead and come up? And this is for the rehabilitation of their 1930s house, which is located in the West Boulevard Historic District. And there again, Pat, why don't you say a few words why we're so proud and why they're getting their award?
The Simons are neighbors and friends of mine who live just a few blocks away. They bought this house probably about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe in that point. It's a beautiful brick Tudor-style house, I would think, and they've added a new garage that basically used the same brick. They rearranged the brick so the brick in the same side of the building is to the street, so there's no change in the looks of the building, but it adds tremendous amount to the building and to the West Boulevard itself. So again, as the West Boulevard Historic Preservation Chairman, I present this award to the Simons. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Well, I'd just like to thank anyone that's involved for the recognition. It's been a long, tedious sometimes road, but it's been a kind of a labor of love, and it's turning out really well. And I just want the folks that okay the variations and deviations. People come in here and say you can't do something. I just want you to know that in Rapid City itself, from the engineers and architects, the contractors, the vendors, and the tradespeople. They're outstanding. If you want to do something with historic value, you can get it done here in Rapid City. So that's all I'd like to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you. No, I did not pay him to say those words. The last thing I just want to mention, as you came in, if you, we do have some boards. Gene Kesloff, I know, was down there all day putting up some boards, basically depicting Rapid City's history and some of the landmarks that we have. So as you make your way out this evening, please stop at the bottom of the stairs and take a look at that. I know that they put an awful lot of work into that. With that, thank you, and we'll continue. Thank you, everyone. We move on, and the next item on the agenda is the general public comment period. This is time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action tonight will not be taken on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the council members present. I do not have any speaker request forms for any item not on the agenda. Does anyone wish to speak to the council on any issue that is not on the agenda? If not, we will move on. We are on to the non-public hearing items. These are items 1 through 113, inclusive 1 through 113. Chair would look for a motion to open public comment period on items 1 through 94, please. We have a motion and a second. A discussion on that motion. Motion is to open the public comment period on items 1 through 94 inclusive. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We do have a couple speaker request forms. Please keep in mind, we do time this. You'll have 3 minutes, and so if you watch the lights, we'll ask you to come up, identify yourself, and then the floor will be yours. First speaker request form is from Ron Sasso on items 53 and item number 64. 53 and 64. Mr. Sasso, you'll have the floor. And there again, just a reminder, please identify yourself for the public record.
Ron Sasso, 219 San Marco Boulevard. Basically, I just wanted to express one, support of the changes and improvements to the Silver Street area. I also wanted to express that from ADA standards, looking at, I know on the west side of Rapid City and throughout, I think there are still more sidewalks, more areas where there is a need for infrastructure. And I believe that this is a good step in the right direction, but there's a lot more to be done within our city. And looking at the 2020 strategic plan, I think that's excellent. The other thing that I did want to also agree with, that the Out of the Dust program, it sounds like is a good idea for the city to be moving forward with that. As a parent of a child with asthma, I know how important it is to limit the amount of dust that we have and improve our air quality, and that is particularly an issue on the west side. So just thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We also have a speaker request form on item number 70 from Michael Galanda. Michael, if I mispronounce it, please forgive me. I think I'm close. I know Mike, but I can
Mr. Mayor, I think you got it right.
Good.
Well, I was here at the legal phone. You know what? Real simple. It's not probably been brought up. This is what? The year of 2010. I can go out and in 3 minutes we'll end real quick. If you want, I can go find stats where people are being killed for being gay, transgender, or whatever. If we can't grow and our laws can't grow, what are we going to be? Another Wyoming? Are we going to be in the papers because we don't have laws? It's 2010. It's time to grow.
Thank you, sir. We have no further speaker request forms on any items 1 through 94 inclusive. Anyone else wish to speak on any items 1 through 94 inclusive? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period on items 1 through 94 inclusive, please. So moved. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the consent calendar. This is items 1 through 83, 1 through 83 inclusive. Chair will ask if the staff or the council would like to have any items 1 through 83 pulled from the consent calendar. If so, please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Number 68.
68, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Item 64, please.
64, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
74, please.
74, thank you. 68, 74. Okay, any additional items that we need to pull from the consent calendar? Please turn on your lights. Seeing none, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar, items 1 through 83 inclusive, with the exception of items 64, 68, and 74. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We'll go to the Public Works items. Item number 64, and we'll go to our Vice Chair of Public Works, Alderman Sam Quaker. Could you please read that in, please?
Item 64 is approval of Resolution 2010-47, modifying the city's currently adopted out of the dust policy by removing the requirement for matching payment. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the Public Works Director, Robert Ellis, for bringing back, in the last month, he's brought back 2 cost-saving measures to the city that's going to save us money. Number one is this dust fund. We're actually going to get some alleys paved that we do a lot of maintenance on, and the other one that I recall is saving the pothole truck, which we're only going to get a $4,000 trade-in, and getting more use out of it than that for using it for spare parts or whatnot. And I just want to recognize the cost savings the department's been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to commend Public Works and Robert Ellis for his leadership in getting these initiatives move forward and changing policy and procedure when he sees best fit for Rapid City and the community. So I appreciate what you're doing in Public Works, and you're doing a great job, and so is your crew. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bill Waugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Ellis concerning the paving. Will we be paving the same amount of alleyways and non-paved streets than we have in the past because of this?
Let's go to Mr. Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director.
Over the past few years, we've budgeted $50,000 every year for this program, and quite honestly, the money was going unused because of the lack of interest. I suspect that now that it's 100% funded by the city, for this budget year, we still have $50,000. We may look at increasing that in future years because now there will be a real drive to do more of this, which may necessitate additional funding. But we have 17 miles of unpaved streets in town, so we've got plenty of areas that need to be addressed.
Thank you. Anything else,
That's
Mr.
all I
Waugh?
needed.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval. Let's go back to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support the motion on the floor. I do have a question for Robert Ellis. Can you, and you talked about it the other day, Robert, but if you could briefly lay out what the process would be if there's a request so that there is a fair process for considering and vetting requests that come forward.
Let's go to Robert Ellis, Public Works Director.
Certainly. We will take those requests at the Public Works Office. Anybody that would have a desire to see their alleyway or street paved can certainly contact us. But I'm really going to rely on our Streets Department to give us advice on which streets they're spending the most general fund dollars on. I do know that last year we spent about $230,000 maintaining gravel roadways. And so my goal is knock off those streets that we're continually going back to after every rainstorm and regrading, putting more gravel down, because from a financial standpoint, we can get the biggest bang for our buck there. And as we start eliminating some of those high maintenance roadways, we're going to fall back on the petition requests that we've received from citizens in the past, and we have a good idea of where those are. But if anybody would like to contact us expressing their interest, they can certainly contact the Public Works Office.
Thank you. Anything else? Very good. And Robert, just a reminder, the discussion we actually had, I believe, at Public Works was the fact that the staff would come back with a recommendation of the top priorities and that the council would adopt that in a group, so we wouldn't have to worry about things shifting too much. They certainly have the ability to change it, but we want to do it as a group. Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Just another question about defining. I heard Robert describing them as roadways. We are talking about alleys, am I correct?
Let's go to Robert Ellis.
We're talking alleyways and roadways. There are some roads in town that are still gravel that would qualify, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I guess I didn't hear all that discussion, but the $230,000 on graveling, actually in the long run, you could probably put some of that money back in for roadways. So again, that was pretty smart, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Motion on the floor is for approval that we're dealing with item number 64, which is to approve resolution 2010-047, which would modify the city's current out of the dust program and remove the requirement for matching payments. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Go to item number 68. Mr. Quaker, if you would, sir, please.
Item 68 is to approve a request to waive the requirement to meter stormwater flows to historic rates. Move approval for the sake of discussion.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Quaker. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's go to Alderman Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple questions on this item. I see that the staff recommended denial on this item. Is that correct?
Marcia?
That's correct. This was an exception that was submitted to the Public Works and Growth Management staff and was denied.
I think that when we look at approving this thing, we need to actually go out there and look at this drainage area. I spent the last couple of days dealing with a couple of people who have had this drainage issue drained into their properties, and it creates a larger problem than what is actually on this piece of paper here. And with the staff recommending denial, I think that at the least case we should continue this item and take some time to talk to staff about this, because as my understanding is the state requires that the drainage be the same capacity as it was previous to development, and we're trying to waive that, which is going to in turn flood somebody downstream. And we've dealt with this problem over on Robbinsdale and Nebraska Street when one of the developers had a project that was built. They didn't plan ahead for the project being built next to them, and then the city spent $200,000 fixing it. I'm not going to approve of this one tonight. I think that we should take another look at it and see how much drainage this is going to affect downhill, and maybe Marcia could answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Marcia Elkins, Growth Management Director.
Thank you. This is the Oga College up on Knollwood. The proposal is to take an area that has pavement on it and to add an addition instead, reducing the area that's paved parking and replacing it with the impervious surface of the roof line associated with the structure. You can see the dark line there. In looking at this, staff was not aware of any situation where we totally waived the requirements for the stormwaters to be metered out, and that's part of the reason for the recommendation. Very light, you can see corner of the site. Here is the driveway that's coming into another portion of the parking lot along here. I believe this is an attachment on your agenda as well. And again, where it comes into the site. Staff believes that there can be some metering located in this vicinity It will affect the utilities that are located there. They will need to be relocated, and there's a cost associated with that, which was a concern of the developer of the site. Again, it's a beneficial use to the community to have this facility here. The college serves some 500 students in our community. But again, we were concerned about the stormwater and the precedent that it could set. We did evaluate the downstream improvements. The drainage from this area does go into the Knollwood area. There's nothing that's been identified that would indicate that the Knollwood detention basin would not be able to handle the water in this area. However, there are areas further downstream, as the city is aware, where we're doing significant improvements down near Campbell Street all the way down to Rapid Creek. So this significant impact has not been identified in the upstream reaches of this drainage basin. However, downstream there are some concerns.
Alderman Weifenbach, still.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's definitely my concern right there, is that when we do these little projects like this and we don't take in consideration what's going to happen down the line, obviously I'll listen to the discussion up here, and then after that, when appropriate, I'll make a motion.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Let's go back to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to continue this item and have some sort of information that brings forward how this will affect the downstream people from this particular area.
2 weeks?
2 weeks would be fine, as long as someone could bring forward this information.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item for 2 weeks. Typically, we do not take public comment. Is there a question? Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Can the applicant explain why he would like this exception and how he's not infecting the impervious surface, creating more drainage problems with the addition?
Yes, thank you. I'm Gary Renner with Renner Associates, the engineer on this project. And what I really want to point out is that our project is not increasing the runoff at all. We're replacing asphalt with a building. And what we're being required to do is to come up with some detention for the building when it was originally built. You know, in other words, playing catch-up. And I don't know where that requirement came from. But we tried everything we could to provide detention, and the area that Marcia indicates where we could put detention, as she said, there's utilities there that could be rerouted, you know, and we could do that. But in order to detain stormwater, you have to build a hole. You have to, you know, something to hold the water, and then you have to meter it out of the bottom of the pond.
And just so you know, the motion on the floor is a continuation motion, but Deb, the floor is back to you.
Sorry,
if
I
you'd
guess-
if you'd like to offer a different motion so we can continue the conversation. Otherwise, it's more appropriate to really talk about the continuation.
I guess I wanted more information. This is the bad thing about the continuation that we do.
Yep.
This is why I'm saying this, is because I can't really make a decision until I hear
Right.
what he's saying. If I can make that continuation, that's why I said continue for discussion, to make sure that my vote was going to go the right way on the issue. Is that a good way to put it? So how do we let people talk and tell us what's happening even on a continuation?
Typically, on a continuation motion, the only thing anybody's supposed to talk about is whether or not it's appropriate to continue it. If you wish to make a second substitute motion to approve the request, then you can actually do it that way, and then we can open it up for discussion.
That was the first motion, but
That was
I guess I wanted to hear why and why not, but we can go back and discuss that again, but I thought,
Yep.
okay, it's my fault.
That's right.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is to continue this item for 2 weeks and ask staff to come back with some more information. Yes, Marcia?
Would it be beneficial to send it back to Public Works Committee to allow that to be discussed more fully?
Okay. Someone want to make that motion? Okay. Okay. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second substitute motion and a second to send this back to Public Works. Discussion on that motion. Now, there again, keep in mind, the only thing we really should be discussing is whether or not it's appropriate to send it back to Public Works. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I'm in support of the continuation motion. The hydrology report that is a part of this particular item is not very comprehensible to those of us who are not engineers, so perhaps one of the things that would need to be a part of the discussion would be a little more simple explanation of the notations associated with the hydrology report. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask the council not to continue this back to Public Works. It was a unanimous motion out of Public Works, and we did listen to Mr. Renner's testimony at that time. That's why I think Alderwoman Hadcock's dilemma that she states is a good thing to bring up, because we did hear the testimony, and I think once you hear the testimony, you'll see that this is a reasonable request. And so I would ask that we either approve it tonight, and if you want to continue it, please continue it to Legal and Finance, because that's the questions that I'm hearing from the council members are not from Public Works members, they're from Legal and Finance members.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with Mr. Quaker's comments, and I won't be in support of the continuation motion because we heard it, and I'd like to vote on it.
Okay, and just for point of clarification, the motion is to actually send this back to Public Works. Now, and let's just step through this very quickly as far as procedurally. If you wish to take up the original motion, what we need to do is we'll need to vote down two different motions, and then we'll get ourselves back to the original motion, which is the motion to approve. Okay, everyone clear on that motion? Motion on the floor, okay, is to send this to Public Works. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Let's take a quick roll call, please.
Kroger? No. Hadcock? No. Waugh? No. Martinson? Oops. Quaker?
No.
LaCroix?
No.
Olson? Weifenbach? That is 1 to 7.
Okay, motion fails. Now we're back to the first substitute motion, which was to continue for 2 weeks. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
There was one no from Alderman Weifenbach, so motion fails. We are back to the original motion. The original motion was for approval of the request to waive the requirement of a meter storm flow to historic rates. Is that correct, Marcia? Okay. Discussion on that motion. We're on the original motion. That is a motion to approve the request to waive. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Now I can ask the applicant questions?
That you can.
Okay. Sorry, Gary. We were trying to get to where we are right now, and sometimes it takes us a little bit, but we appreciate your patience as well.
Thank you.
Could we have the picture, Miss Marcia, please? Thank you. Gary, my question is, when you have this much impervious surface with a parking lot already, and you're going to add a building to this, did you check? I guess my worry is the people around you and how that's affecting it already, and it's not really your building that's adding to it. This is probably what triggered this, is the impervious surface plus the building. Was it draining properly before you started this project or at the time you were starting this project?
Jerry?
Yes. The whole parking lot drains out into Knollwood Avenue, and that's the whole problem. There's no storm sewer in Knollwood Avenue. So if we put in a detention pond, there's no place to drain it to because it'll be below the street.
So tell me what that would cause by putting the drainage that has been recommended by staff. It seems like you need to take it somewhere, so it's still, to me, it looks like it would affect people, again, by the impervious surface. So what's the solution? So in this case, the staff sees that you're not affecting other people, and you guys are protecting and getting this project through.
Mr. Spurlick?
Mr. Who?
Oh,
Gary Renner.
Gary Renner. I just got
It's Renner, no Spurlick.
Yeah. Sorry, Gary.
That's okay. I conferred with the engineers and the staff, and they couldn't come up with any drainage problems downstream at this time. I think the important thing to see is that The whole city has been studied by several, all the drainage basins have been studied, and improvements designed based on existing conditions.
Right.
So it seems logical to me that the drainage basin downstream has been designed to take care of this existing condition. The important thing would be if we're creating more runoff by this project, and we're not.
Okay, and that's what I needed to know, and we needed to get to that point, and I appreciate that. You've answered my questions, and I know the Knollwood drainage basin is a huge basin that's coming off, and just making sure that those neighbors are taken care of. And that was my major issue, is you're not affecting the neighbors. You might be helping yourself, but not affecting the neighbors. So I appreciate that explanation, sir.
Thank you.
And whatever the vote is tonight, nothing's going to change. I mean, if you vote it down, the drainage is going to remain the same, or if you approve it, the drainage is going to remain the same.
Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I did listen to the debate at Public Works, and I did understand that the discussion in which there was no change. My question for Mr. Renner is, I heard you say something about there was a change. Explain that part of it.
There was a change?
You implied something that suggested to me that you thought there might be some change, or is the requirement for this retention pond really predicated on the fact that you're adding the construction of the building? In other words, that triggers.
No. No, see, we're taking out asphalt and replacing with a building, so we're not increasing the runoff.
Why did this come up for discussion then? That was the part that I didn't hear at the Public Works meeting.
Because they are requiring us to play catch-up, to go back to this property before the building was built and provide for the detention that should have been done years ago when that building was built. But it wasn't required then, or I don't know why.
Okay. Karen, you still have the floor, ma'am.
So when you say that, so how does that play into the whole discussion of drainage, since I'm hearing that the drainage is okay, but you're suggesting that there wasn't when the building was built, and I'm guessing it was because this was before it was actually in the city? Is that possible?
No, I don't think it was
What is
that
the
far
reason?
back. Maybe
I'm not sure what the
Marcia
reason is,
knows.
but maybe Marcia can explain. I just hear you saying that this wasn't required previously.
Marcia?
What's triggering the review is the fact that they are submitting a major amendment to the plan development to do this expansion and asking for a building permit. So that's what has triggered the issue to come forward. We went back and looked at the last two revisions to the building, which were involved. We could not find a copy of the drainage plan that was submitted with the plans. It was a requirement, but we could not find a copy, and the original architect, TSP, could not find a copy. So we can't answer the question on what was supposed to have been done at that point in time, or if there was drainage plans that indicated that it wasn't necessary. So I can't answer the question about what happened previously. In looking at the request that's come forward, the addition does trigger the review, and as such requires the detention to occur to pre-development flows.
Okay, you still have the floor, Karen.
I do have some concerns. I'm certainly aware of a number of places in town where drainage was dramatically changed and the downstream neighbors had problems, and I'll listen to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I think first and foremost, I want to thank Mr. Ron Weifenbach for his work. I've seen the emails going forth with the residents he's working with on drainage. But I think on this particular project, the reason why the Public Works approved it unanimously was because we weren't actually changing the square footage. Going from asphalt to building is the same as basically what we started out with. And I understand as Marcia's saying, further downstream when we get down to Omaha and Campbell, that we have some problems down in that area, but I know we have plans to have them redone. So I'm in support of approving this, but in the same sense, the council in the last couple of years has really looked hard at stormwater runoff, and I think we're going to be looking closer into the future. And so that'd be, I'm in support of the motion on the floor for approval.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've got most of my questions asked. I just wanted to ask one more question for Marcia.
Okay.
And, Mr. Mayor, my question would be is, this doesn't affect the flow, then this is basically, is it a true statement that the flow will be the same?
Marcia?
The current flows will be the same. It's not the same as the pre-developed flows, though.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep. Very good. Anything else? Motion on the floor is for approval of the request to waive the requirement. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. We are on to item number 74, which is under the Legal and Finance Committee, and I would ask Alderwoman Karen Olson to please read that in, please.
Item number 4 is acknowledge the report regarding Freon items being disposed at the landfill, and my motion would be to acknowledge the report from Mr.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the report. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the report. However, I would like to see the July 1992 policy. I think we may need to review that since it's been close to 20 years, and I would like to take a look at it. And I would also give an opportunity for the certification on the 20-some air conditioners, copies of that to be provided as well, so we can determine that those air conditioners were properly disposed of. So we can either acknowledge this tonight and I can bring it back up at Public Works, or we can continue it. But unless that information is available, we should probably just continue this item. So do we know if that information is available?
I don't believe it's, is it available tonight, Robert? Is it available tonight?
Yes, I do have a copy right here with me, not electronic, but paper.
Okay.
I'll just support the acknowledgement of the report, and I'll get the information, and we can bring it back forward if we need to.
Very good. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Since this was brought up, we might as well talk about it. On the policy, I guess, if I could, what would be the point of reviewing the policy unless you're going to change it, which is okay? And number 2, the changes of certification and needing those 20 things. Why? I guess, if I could ask Mr. Quaker on those 2 issues.
You can answer.
Is there a reasoning so we can tell our Public Works Director kind of where you're going and what he needs to look up, and so we're all on the same page? If I could, Alderman Quaker.
If Alderman Quaker would like to answer, go
Yeah,
ahead.
there were, of course, there have been a number of concerns relating to the landfill, but the concern specifically on this item is how air conditioners have been disposed of at the landfill. And I think that seeing the 1992 policy is a very reasonable request. Typically, it would be linked to the agenda so that everybody could see it, and it's not. So I'm simply asking for that information. So I think that's a reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I guess you're on Solid Waste Committee, and I would think that if you had that question, that would be something you would have brought forward and gave a heads up, so we all were on the same page. I know questions come up in your mind. The 20 certifications and proving what they're saying. I understand we need to do this once in a while, but sometimes it gets into, again, are we going to tell the facts up here about what happened, or are we going to ask for 20 these receipts and then come back and say something different? So I just want to make sure this report, when we're giving reports, is factual, and that we're emailed, or when we get our reports, it's truthfully set up front. So I don't mind questions, I don't mind emails, but the main issue here is when we're asking questions and getting emails, that when we put forth the facts up front, I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Robert, and maybe it's a misunderstanding of mine. I thought all the correspondence we saw on this issue was 10 air conditioners, not 20. Did I miss something?
Yes, I believe that on 2 different occasions back in 2009, we received certifications on appliances that previously contained Freon. Generally, we don't get these materials. There are other handlers that take them. One was in August, and it might have been because the Sturgis Rally was going on, and that's generally where these things are delivered. But in August, we received 11 units, and we do have the certifications that are signed by somebody registered with the state for removal of Freon. Then we also received a load in, this would have been 5/7 of '09, and there were a total of 5 units that were delivered then, it appears.
Okay.
And the policy is very simple. I could quickly read it into the record if that's what they'd like. It's only a couple sentences long.
Okay. It's fairly short?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead,
With
please.
the enactment of the Clean Air Act, it is required that Freon from air conditioners, refrigeration equipment, et cetera, be reclaimed and recycled. It is against the law to discharge Freon into the atmosphere. Therefore, it is required that all Freon be removed from such appliances before disposal at the Rapid City landfill. This will require that a written certification of compliance with federal regulations has occurred before the appliance, such as mentioned above, can be disposed of at the landfill. Your cooperation will be appreciated. And this was sent to all of our bulk customers that deal with these types of appliances.
Okay, very good. And we have certifications for, we believe, for all the equipment that came in?
We do, yes.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Motion is, keep in mind, to acknowledge, so let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for Mr. Ellis. So, Robert, you're confident there is no effort to skirt those rules? The rules have been consistently followed over the years.
Let's go to Robert Ellis.
The information that I have shows that we have the certifications for the units that were delivered to us. Now, if there's other information out there that I'm not aware of, this is a federal crime punishable with a $150,000 fine. So if somebody has information out there that I don't have, I'd be very interested in knowing it.
Anything else?
Thank you. We can perhaps talk about this later, but the information that Alderman Weifenbach and I brought to the city attorney's office last August indicated there was 23 air conditioners that were disposed of at the landfill, and so I was just hoping to obtain those 23 certificates. And so if I could just get copies of the information that you have thus far, and we can review the rest of it later. But I agree it is a serious issue, which is why Alderman Weifenbach and I had raised it many months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? My request is, if we do have information that there's additional units, Alderman Quaker or Alderman Weifenbach, I haven't seen them, if you could please make sure that my office gets those, I'd appreciate it. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I guess that's why I'm confused. We're having 20, then we just went up to 23. That's my bottom line. First of all, I truly believe if there's questions and stuff, that's great, and we need to look at things, totally positive. But first, get your facts. Go talk to these guys, landfill, Jerry Wright, and Robert Ellis. They can't solve a problem through talking through employees. They have to have that information straight up. So if you have that information, nobody's saying there or denying there wasn't 23 or 20. The main thing is have the discussion off the dais and get all that discussion not in an email, but let's all just talk about it and make sure we get this right. And again, I'm not opposed to anything that we're bringing up. I just want to make sure when it comes to the dais, we have all the facts and we have that information to give to the public, so we're not just throwing things out there in the newspaper and other things that we're just contemplating or just deciding on our own, guessing what's really happening. So I appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Quaker, and I would hope we would meet with these two guys and solve this issue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach. Just a reminder, everyone, motion on the floor is to acknowledge the report. Alderman Weifenbach, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of acknowledging the report, but I'm not here to get in a proverbial match with anybody, but if anybody wants to challenge me on it, I'll sure do it. This information was asked for behind the dais. It took approximately a year to get here, so anybody has that question in mind, they can sure come and challenge me on it. So thank you, and we'll acknowledge the report.
Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to make the comment that this is the first time I've heard about air conditioners being disposed of, and it was brought up, they said, in August, so that was my only concern. I wanted to let the council know this is, you know, if it has, I'd like to see the minutes and so forth, because going since August and this happening, it kind of makes me wonder, and I'd like to have that information when it comes out like that. Thank you.
The motion is to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to past item 74. We're on to the end of the consent calendar. We're on to the continued consent calendar. And that is items 84 through 94, 84 through 94 inclusive. And I'll turn to the staff. Do any of those items, 84 through 94 inclusive, need to be pulled? How about for anybody on the council? Please turn on your light. Seeing none, the chair would look for a motion to approve the continued consent items, items 84 through 94 inclusive, per the recommendations on the agenda. Thank you. Motion and a second to approve. All those in favor? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the continued consent items. We're on to the non-consent items. These are items 95 through 114 inclusive. 95 through 114 inclusive. Chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period, please.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are open. We are in the open public comment period. I have one speaker request form, and this is item 113. 113 from Bob Toms. And go ahead, sir. If you would, Mr. Toms, if you would please identify yourself for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
My name is Bob Toms. I live at 4882 Avenue A, and I wanted to come before you this evening and see if they're kind of reopen the discussion or bring up the discussion with regard to road conditions in the Big Sky subdivision. I don't know if everyone's aware of the history, but there's a portion of the Big Sky subdivision that is inside the city limits, and also a portion that's outside the city limits. And the portion that's outside the city limits, at the time the roads were constructed, through however it happened, the roads are not holding up properly. There have been some lawsuits between the developer and the contractor that built the roads, and we haven't seen any action or any help in getting our streets repaired. So I wanted to approach the council tonight and ask if there was any possibility that the city can do anything to help us, even though we are just outside the city limits in that case. I have a few photos, if the council would be interested in taking a look at those. If not, then I think that concludes my comments.
Thank you, sir. We will be bringing this up. It'll come up in probably just a few minutes here, and I think you'll probably get an update as far as where we're at in a pending lawsuit. So,
okay.
Thank you, sir. I see no further speaker request forms on any items 95 through 114. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any item 95 through 114 inclusive? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 95. Alderwoman Olson, would you please read that in, please?
Item 95, first reading of ordinance 5610, an ordinance to remove the requirement to be a freeholder for membership on the airport board by amending section 2.72.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And my motion is for approval, and I have a comment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it clear that freeholder means that you own property, and we are removing that. It's no longer you need to be a resident of Rapid City, but you don't have to be a property owner.
Very good.
Freeholding went out a long time ago, was in place in the Revolutionary, just after the Revolutionary War, but it's not been in place for a long time.
Very good. Motion on the floor is first reading of ordinance number 5610, which would just remove the reference or the requirement to be a freeholder to serve on the airport board. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems reasonable to remove this requirement. Do we know if we have this requirement for any of our other boards, commissions, or committees? And if we do, can we remove them from them all?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware of any other boards that have this requirement. We'll certainly pay attention, and if we find others, we'll bring those forward in a similar fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise. We were actually looking at this, and I was a little surprised to read freeholder in there. So, motion on the floor is for approval. First reading of ordinance number 5610. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 96, please.
Item number 96, first reading of ordinance 5611, an ordinance to clarify the process for appointing members to the Historic Preservation Commission by amending section 2.68.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 97, please.
Second reading of ordinance 5605, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 3 for 2010. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval of second reading of ordinance number 5605, which is a supplemental appropriation. Let's go to Mr. Preston. I think there was one change in there you wanted to point out. Is that correct? Mr. Preston, City Finance Officer.
Yes, this was brought up at Legal and Finance, but the change is from the first reading we had. We did add one item, that was erosion sediment control for $45,317. That was increased to adopt a budget funded through the stormwater revenues. And it's for charges for goods and services.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? This is for approval of second reading of ordinance number 5605, which is a supplemental appropriation number 3 for 2010. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 98, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the letter of confirmation of mutual agreement with St. Joe Investment Group, LLC. And I
think, let's see, is Mr. Kurtz here somewhere? There he is, clearing back. If we could just get a motion to approve for discussion, and then we'll...
For discussion, the motion would be for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Kurtz is here if somebody would like to ask him a question. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wednesday, you had a meeting with, my understanding was with the St. Joe Investment Group. Is there a way that we could get an understanding of what's going on? Or maybe an update? Okay, maybe you had that planned. Thank you.
Sure. Very good. Happy to. They did come in and they said they continue to move forward. They are struggling a little bit with the size of the financing package. Their goal is within the next month and a half is to restructure that and hopefully get approval on it. That's why they're asking until June 1st to actually extend that deadline. And so hopeful, but there again, knowing the climate as far as the difficulties at times getting financing on large commercial projects, I can see why they're probably struggling just a little bit at this point. But they were hopeful that they should be able to make some progress. If not, June 1st, I think the council certainly has the obligation and probably the responsibility to take a look at where we want to go from there. Alderman Weifenbach, floor is still yours. Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I made the motion, and perhaps the more appropriate motion is to continue this. So I would suggest to my colleagues that might be an appropriate motion.
Okay. Jason, recommendation?
I guess I would ask if there is something specific that the staff would be requested to do if there is a continuance.
Okay. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Okay, very good. Just a reminder, the motion is to actually grant an extension of that agreement until June 1st, which is about 30 days. So,
That's not the motion, is it?
yes, that is the motion on the floor. That is the request, is to extend the agreement by 30 days to June 1st. With that, let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of consistency with how we're handling this project versus the previous project that had been planned for this site, are we being, I just wanted to make sure that we're being consistent. Are the same reasons that we're allowing a continuation, are any of those reasons, were those also a factor in the, that the city was not willing to give on in the previous project? Does that question make sense? I mean, are we making accommodations here with this project, that any accommodations here that we as a city declined to make with the previous proposal?
Jason, I was going to say, I don't believe so. As a matter of fact, I think the previous, which was the Rushmont project, I think we actually granted extensions on that some length of time beyond this. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. We're actually much farther along in this process than we were in the Rushmont project. We never even got to a formal written agreement in Rushmont, so the answer is definitely no.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson. Did you have anything else like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be in support of the motion on the floor.
Okay.
Since it has a deadline, and I do believe we all are concerned about a deadline.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 99, please.
Item number 99 is refund the application fees to the Melody Acres residents. My motion would be to deny.
Okay. Just for point of clarification, that would be original motion. We did not get a second on the motion to deny. So, Alderman Kroger, your motion be the original motion. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would simply advise the council that this expenditure, as contemplated, in my opinion, is not lawful.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too, I'm going to take the advice of our lawyers, which is that there's no legal way to do what is being asked. And as someone who took an oath to uphold the laws of the state of South Dakota and the city of Rapid City, I don't believe I can support returning this money. This money was, at the time that these fees were paid, they were legal, and they were moving forward in a process of rezoning. And unfortunately, we decided that there needs to be some changes. But at the time the fees were paid, they were legal because we had taken this action. And I don't see any way under our municipal law or under state law, and I think there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of investigation on this, and I don't think I can vote in favor of this, because then I'm asking our finance officer to do something that our finance officer would also identify as illegal. This is this has been awkward. There isn't anyone up here on the dais who is happy with where we are, but we as a council made the decision to do this rezone with the planned development, and therefore I think I need to stand by our previous decision, and I will not be in favor of the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. At the Legal and Finance Committee meeting last week, Alderman Weifenbach made the comment that if there's a will, there's a way. And I believe that. When we brought this forward about a month ago, we were told that the quickest that we could get this PRD removed was, I believe, July 7th. And thankfully, someone did not believe that was true. And as of today, I think we're going to have that accomplished by the end of this month. And we actually moved it up over a month. These 4 individuals that we're talking about, they had put in a request for whatever it might be for the city to do something, and it complied under the mobile home residential district zoning. There was no need for them to have a PRD to get that accomplished, and we're talking about 65 residences that we put this PRD on. Now, if any of those people want to come forward with and do something and they don't comply with the mobile home zoning, then they either can't do it or they can move forward and apply for a PRD and see if they can get that accomplished so they can move forward. And that's the appropriate way to do it. But these individuals were charged a fee for something that they really did not need to be required to do. And it's their money that they turned in and paid for those fees, and I believe that we should have the ability as a city to refund those fees, and that's what I'm asking to do. They paid $250 plus, I believe, $20 for a mailing list. The only thing that's really been spent is the fee that they had to pay for the mailing itself. So in my mind, we should be able to give them back their money of $270, and I would hope that the rest of the council agrees with that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, I have a question for our city attorney.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Jason, in your recollection, has the council approved in the past refunds of fees?
Go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
I can't think of an instance.
We're not collecting fees.
I can't think of an instance, no.
And I know it was a long time ago, but I was finally able to find it, and I wanted to see, and I found it today, and I wanted to see if this is an applicable argument. But on the minutes of March 27, 2003, it appears at that meeting, and it was a motion made by me and seconded by then Alderman Hanks, that if it was regarding impact fees, and there was a real issue then in terms of people in Rapid Valley who had been charged the impact fee, which was actually an ordinance, and then there was a real question of fairness. And the city council that night, on a 7-2 vote, allowed for those fees to be either refunded or not collected. And we can ask for verification and maybe research that further, Jason. And I would have shared that with you earlier, but I just was able to just find it. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that we had done something like this before, and I think that that's a qualifiable situation. The reality is that this is a matter of fairness, and this is, in my view, the equivalent of buying a pair of blue jeans at Walmart that you do not need, and you're simply returning it for a refund. So I think that this is something that we can and should do, and I think that it is the right thing to do, and I do support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did say that whether it was a will, there was a way, and I've spent several hours with the help of a few individuals doing my own research on, and I still have come to the conclusion of how this happened, or how the city could go out to an already developed neighborhood, overlay a future land use plan, annex those people, and then tell them that they have to come forward with an application to fill out for a PRD. So I went to the state law and I went to the city law, and the city law requires 7-day certified letters And they also require a posting, but there is a caveat that says if the city so chooses, basically, they can divert that period, that portion of their responsibility. But if you're a citizen in this, of Rapid City, you have to do it. Then I went to the South Dakota Codified Law, Chapter 11.4, Municipal Planning and Zoning, and the governing body may adopt a zoning ordinance. Before adoption or renewal of the ordinance, the council shall hold at least one public hearing. Notice of the time and place of the hearing shall be given once, at least 10 days in advance, by publication in a legal newspaper of the municipality. And then there's any interested person shall be given a full, fair, and complete opportunity to be heard at the hearing. And it goes on, but my point is that we have a direct conflict with the state. And we're saying that we don't have to give interested parties a full, fair, and complete opportunity to be heard. This is one of the major concerns that came forward with the people in the valley when they wanted to be annexed into our fine city, was that we would do specifically what we did in this situation. I still have yet to understand the process that was undertaken, understanding that somehow along the line I was a part of this, and I apologize for that. But I don't think that it's fair that these citizens of Rapid City, once Rapid Valley, should have to apply for a PRD that they don't even understand what it is, and I can't even really tell them what it is. And we've heard the fact that it doesn't change anything that they have the ability to do with their property. I think that there's a process that needs to be followed. I'm not sure that the process from the city was followed in the first place to make it even to the point where it was legal. I don't know that we can just overlay a PRD on a people that is already developed. I've been here 3 years, and we've recommended several times for developments that are being developed to have PRDs. They have to come forward and fill out an application, but they fully and clearly understand what they're getting into, because they're doing it because they have a need that's outside of the zoning ordinances. The last meeting, we had a special council meeting to revoke or reverse, whatever we want to call it, the amendment to this comprehensive plan. All the information that I've gathered on the future land use plan, map, and the comprehensive plan was a recommendation to the city council. There's no real legal authority there. It's all a recommendation. There's two different titles that deal with Title II deals with the Planning Commission. Title 17 deals with individuals. I'm not sure that we've done the due diligence to say whether this is placed in a legal manner or not. I dispute that fact, and I think that the application fees that these people put forward, the $250 plus the $20, should be refunded to them. I think the total is about $800 and short of $1,000 in any way, shape, or form. Was it roughly $1,000 for the 4 people that are involved? I still think that there's a challenge to the validity of this, and I've brought tonight. I got one application here because I can make copies of this, and I can put everybody in this room in a PRD tonight if you give me your address, and you all can fill one of these out, and I'll get the $250 from you and move forward. I think that this is an injustice that has been done. I'm a part of it. I'm willing to admit and accept my part of that responsibility, but I think it's appropriate for us to deem this unnecessary or revoked or revised or whatever it is, and give these people their money back. And I will listen to the rest of the council.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just a couple of things. Marcia, a PRD, Planned Residential Development, is different than a PDD, right? A Planned Development Destination.
Marcia?
Actually, there's 3 stages to a planned development. The planned development designation is the first step. The second step is the initial development plan, and the third step is the final development plan.
Which is the PRD is the final?
The final development plan is the third step.
So initial and final aren't the same?
No, they can be combined, but they're not the same.
So how does the PRD, tell me how the PRD plays in this? Or notification? What do you write for a PRD for following steps, for putting up a sign, sending the right notifications, and bringing forth a PRD.
Marcia?
What's the term it's under?
The plan development designation is a step that can be taken that just requires the landowner to sign the application. It's reviewed internally and is approved administratively. When there's an initial development plan or final development plan, at that point in time, there has to be a sign posted on the property and notices sent.
But not for a PRD? What's the,
Those are all parts of a PRD
okay, is initial and final plan?
and PDD.
Okay, so when you put forth your application, which this says on here, there was a rezone your property from no-use district to mobile home residential, will post a sign, notify public. Then it says, please return the signed plan development destination application to growth management at 6th Street. That does not need a sign or notifications?
Marcia?
No, it does not.
Okay, that's for the initial and final? I
No,
thought.
that's for the plan development designation.
Okay, I guess that's the two things I have on this paper, and those are my questions, is if we're not changing an ordinance, but we're implementing a policy change, please tell me what policy change we are implementing, and that would be for Jason Green. If I could, Jason, ask you that question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, at the council, you said the council has changed course on its policy determination, and the process to change that is taking place. So if we're not changing an ordinance, but implementing a policy change, please tell me what that policy change we are implementing.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, as I understand it, you're amending your comprehensive plan. The ordinance that requires the payment of fees is in a different ordinance entirely.
Deb, you still have the floor, ma'am.
So are we revoking these PRDs, or what are we calling it? Policy change, amendment of a comprehensive plan? I guess I haven't figured out what we're quite calling this so far.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
There'll be a couple of steps. The first one would be to amend your comprehensive plan, and then I think that's probably most appropriate to call the action of removing the plan development a zoning change.
Okay, so the council has changed course. The policy determination, the process to change that is taking place. Okay, so I guess what I'm looking at, and this is the bottom line. Like Mr. Weifenbach, state law says an interested person shall be given a full, fair, and complete opportunity to be heard at the hearing. Okay, and then we go, and that is state law. Then we go, as a city council or planning department, amendments may be initiated by property owner or his or her designated representative or by appropriate government. Is this a hearing or a meeting then at that time? Because we do have to give at least one public hearing, right? Before adoption or renewal of an ordinance, the council shall hold at least one public hearing. So was the meeting a public hearing, or was the planning commission the public hearing?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
The ordinance that adopts the plan development's process went through the appropriate public hearing. The plan development designation can be done simply by application or by addition by the council or planning commission when that's before them as a part of the public hearing. So it happens several different ways.
So what makes us different on our public hearings? On this, it says, a posting and maintenance of signs, and then we put at the bottom, this section shall not apply to comprehensive plan amendments instituted by city's planning commission. Then again, in notification requirements, in addition, the planning director may convene or neighborhood meeting to present to discuss a proposed amendment. This section shall not apply to comprehensive plan amendments instituted by the city's planning commission. So I'm trying to figure out by what the governing body may adopt a zoning ordinance. Before adoption or renewal of an ordinance, the council shall hold at least one public hearing. Well, the public hearing that we're doing is different than what the state is saying, isn't it? Because if we're doing this, it sounds like from this plan that we need an application for proposed amendment shall be filed with the planning department, and then after we're done, we can post and maintain signs, and then after that, notification of requirements. But on here, it says that we really don't have to, but the state says we do. So on this hearing, did we do all these three steps?
A couple of things. Deb, if you would, can you, since the rest of us don't have what you have in front of me, can you give us the state statute? Is it somewhere on there?
So South Dakota Codified Law, Chapter 11.4, Municipal Planning and Zoning. 11.4, the governing body may adopt a zoning, or, is that what you're saying?
Just, if you can just give us the statute numbers, then we can look it up, follow along.
11.4, Municipal Planning and Zoning.
1144? Thank you.
I have a different paper that has a, let me see if I can find the
That's
codified
all
law
right.
on there.
Jason, do you understand the question that she was asking?
I think I do. There's a public hearing requirement for adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and that process is underway. There's a public hearing requirement for the adoption of a zoning ordinance, and that process will go forward. The plan development designation is a part of the comprehensive plan and a part of the zoning ordinance. It's not a separate public hearing.
But what I'm saying is we're requiring, and maybe I'm not understanding, we're requiring the applicants to do this, but are we doing it this by the same ordinance and doing complete procedure, posting signs and certified mailings and hearings that we require of property owners? Do we do that by codified law? Do we do it by application, posting of signs, and notification? Do we do it by hearing by state law? Or can we change or adopt or add in these sentences that say, the section shall, or where does it say it? The section shall not apply to comprehensive plan amendments instituted by the city's planning commission. And it says that both on notifications and posting of signs. So how can we be opposite of what we have individuals do if we don't even do it ourselves? And by, hold on just a sec, and by application, when me and Mr. Freitag went to the planning commission, we looked at that application, one application, we didn't have to go through all of them, and by codified law, when we looked through those applications, those procedures weren't followed. So by those procedures, and I think that's what came through with the revocation of the 4, is because of those procedures, number one, they weren't needed, and number two, all the steps for this were not followed. And that was by application. And by chance, did you look at any of those applications, Jason, to make sure that they were followed by codified law? Those 4 applications were done correctly before they were revoked.
Okay, Jason? Yeah.
Okay, I think the confusion here is the difference between the requirements of state law and the requirements of city ordinance.
Okay.
State law simply requires notification of the public hearing by publishing that notice in the newspaper. That's all you have to do to comply with state law for notification on a public hearing for a comp plan amendment or for a zoning ordinance. City ordinance has additional requirements that we impose to presumably ensure that there's broader notice when a private party comes in to seek either a comp plan amendment or a rezoning. Those include the posting of the sign and the sending of the certified letters. There are exceptions for city-initiated processes, and I think you have to have those because the Planning Commission has an obligation to undertake these reviews statutorily, and I don't think you could impose an additional burden on the Planning Commission by ordinance other than the requirement for state law. You certainly can do that for private parties who are asking for alteration of their zoning status.
Okay, Deb, you stopped before me.
So when you checked, did you check any of these applications to see if they were followed by process and procedure?
Jason, and let me, I think where Alderwoman Hadcock is going is
The 4 that were,
right,
that were
yeah.
revoked?
With the applications that were submitted, did staff follow all the requirements that are required as far as the process as far as submitting that application?
I didn't personally review them. It's my understanding that all those procedures were followed.
Okay, then I went to staff, which was one of the staff members, went through them, and it was her interpretation that all the steps were not followed. So I'm just taking it off a staff member, and if that interpretation was not followed, then, and these were revoked, it seems to make sense that you would give back people's money. And if you can't give back their money, that doesn't make sense because they were revoked, and it, to me, it's saying that these, by law, that this was not followed, then how can we not give back somebody's money because they are not valid? These 4 are not valid.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, nothing's been revoked. There may be changes to the comprehensive plan as the council goes through the process, but nothing has been revoked. Additionally, the fee that was paid is very clearly set out as an application fee. It's paid at the time the application is made, regardless of whether it's ultimately approved or denied. So I don't believe there's any legal basis to refund an application fee.
Well, when we went through the process and then we went back, and Freitag, I don't see him out here tonight, they told us it was called revoked. I didn't make the word up, it was called revoked. And by application fee, that taxpayer gave that fee knowing that he was going through a process that was followed correctly by staff and him, but if it was not, it's not valid. It seems like I should be able to get my application fee back.
Jason?
It makes sense because this seems like, I know 2 council members on here are saying we should give their money back. We changed the comprehensive plan, we didn't change we did. We took the PRD off, which is a planned residential development. And if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, on a mobile home court in Melody Acres, we put a PDD, which is a planned destination development. Then what happened is they had an MHR, which is a mobile home residential on it. And then we decided to put a PRD over the top of that, which they have to post signs, and they get more fees between $270 and $500. We came to the determination that these 67 lots, only 2 of them needed it that have applied out of 6 that have already applied. So we decided that they didn't need the 4 RDs. Our growth management department also said that the 4 were not needed. They paid fees for something that was not needed, so we ended up and was told by the staff that it will be revoked. And bottom line is, if it's revoked, then give their application fee back. By codified law, it looks like we did not, meaning the city. Jason didn't check the applications. I did with another guy just to make sure. Talked to the staff, called it revoked. Then that says those application fees on these people, the process was not followed, and by that process not being followed by staff, it's invalid. Invalid means give their money back. So that's my bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, do you have something to add? If not, I'm going to go to the next council person.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one thing to add. There was a question earlier about a prior refund based on the impact fee ordinance in 2003. As I look back at the calendar, it's very clear, and if you look at the end of that set of minutes that Alderman Quaker referred to, what the council said is we didn't have the authority to collect this fee until the initiated measure became effective. So what the council did is it refunded those that had been collected prior to the effective date. So in that case, you would have collected a fee without legal authority, and I think it certainly would be within the authority of the council to refund those based on valid claims. There's no authority to refund money collected under a valid ordinance, however.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. And one thing I want to point out is this council is very concerned over this, and I think it's a lesson well learned that, often we put a PRD on things, thinking we're going to beautify the neighborhood or protect neighborhoods or the entryways or so forth, and I think we've identified that we made a mistake on this. I know I have, and we've heard Ron say it, and I have. We try to resolve this from the sense of the council. I requested the special council meeting to move this forward a little bit faster. We've done that. The argument still comes down to whether it's legal or not to give the money. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to vote for it, even though it's illegal and we'll probably be told we can't do it. But I'm willing to work off the dais with my council members to resolve this if that's what it takes. But for the sense of clarity and support for the neighborhood and for this council, I'm going to be voting for the revote. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger for a second time. Mr. Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Jason Green a question.
Sure. Please go right ahead.
Jason, do you know what the ordinance is you're referring to that says we can't give a refund?
Mr. Green.
It's not an ordinance. It would be a requirement of state law. The only way that the municipality has the authority to expend funds is for a permissible municipal purpose. I know of no statute that authorizes transferring money collected under a valid ordinance to a private party. It doesn't exist. So the expenditure would be without lawful authority. And I think it's also very important to keep in mind that if that is the direction of the council, it's very likely that would result in a qualification to the city's annual audit, which would have significant adverse consequences to the city anytime there was an effort to borrow money or undertake any other financing of municipal obligations.
Mr. Kroger, you still have the floor, sir.
That's all I have right now, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock for a second time.
Mr. Freitag had helped us on this, if we could bring him forward, and I would ask him the question. Again, Jason just said this was, if it was a permissible use and this was a valid ordinance. What we're trying to argue about is up here, or debate, sorry, Jason, I'm not trying to argue with you, but that this is not a valid ordinance. So, Mr. Freitag, based on the information on South Dakota codified law, state law, why do you think this is not a valid ordinance?
And Mr. Freitag, if you just identify yourself for the record, then the floor is yours.
This is Bill Freitag. When you're trying to get your arms wrapped around this, there's two different Rapid City municipal codes. One's 2 and 117. 2 deals with the Planning Commission. 17 deals with the public. Now, there's a little bit of overlap in them, but basically 2 is for the Planning Commission. When you look at municipal 2's, what's my number here? 26. Okay, in your code, if you want to get on your computer, go to 2.60.130.
2.60.
2.60.130.
There you go.
Okay?
Do we need to put that up front, Mayor, or just, can they put that code up front?
Does everybody have it? Can you pull it up? Yep, go ahead, Mr. Freitag.
Okay, in 2.60, if you look at E, it says a comprehensive plan amendment, posting and maintenance of signs. Okay, and you can read down through there, and it tells you the Planning Commission has to do the same thing the individual does. He has to post, the Planning Commission has to post a sign on the property that they want to zone. It says right in your ordinance, until you get to the last sentence. And then when it gets into the last sentence, it says, but the Planning Commission doesn't have to do it. Before that, the Planning Commission does have to do it till you get to the last sentence they added, and they say, oh, but we're not going to do it. Now, if you go to F, that talks about the letters that you have to mail out, certified with return receipt to everybody within 250 feet. 260 says you have to do it until you get to the last sentence, and it says, but if you're the Planning Commission, you don't have to do it. Okay? Title 17 says Mark Workman, who was one of the PRD people in Melody Acres, had to post signs and had to send letters to everybody within 250 feet. Mark Workman lives on Fairmont Street. The very lot on Fairmont Street he lives on is an apple for an apple with what the Planning Commission was doing with this PRD. Okay? He had to do it. The statute said the Planning Commission had to do it, but the Planning Commission took them off. But when you look at the state law that set up what the Planning Commission had to do, and that's the 1144. 1144 says this. Any interested person, it talks about what Jason's doing. You got to do all the publications in the paper. You got to do all this stuff. But it gets real clear about one thing, and it's this. Any interested person shall be given full, fair, and complete opportunity to be heard at a hearing. That's notification. That's what that sign does. That's what the letter to everybody within 250 feet does. It says, hey, we're going to have a hearing. You might want to come to it. The Planning Commission didn't do that. They broke the state law. They don't have any right not to exempt, they have no right to exempt themselves from the registered letters and from the posting of the signs. When I read the law, if it's full, fair, and complete opportunity for a hearing, and full, fair, and complete opportunity for a hearing for Mark Wortman for the very same lot requires signs and letters, why is that full and fair? And the Planning Commission says, I'm going to have a neighborhood meeting. Forget the letters. Forget the signs. We're just going to send them a little notice on a postcard that says, hey, come to a neighborhood meeting. A neighborhood meeting is not a public hearing. So what they didn't have their hearing, but they came to you on September 2nd of 2008 with the comprehensive plan amendment to change the map, the future land use map, to put a PRD on Mark Wortman's lot in Melody Acres, along with 65 other lots in Melody Acres, and God knows how many other acres of land in that particular action you did on September 2nd. You put PRDs on people's property. I'm going to point one more thing out to you. You have zoning, mobile home residential, low density residential, MDR, HDR, medium and high density residential, commercial, heavy industrial, light industrial. That's your zoning districts. PRDs are not zoning districts. PRDs are supplements.
Amendments.
They're supplements to those. So I don't think you could put a PRD on. Number one, the property's in the county. You can't zone it. You can't zone any property in the county. The only thing you can do in the county within 3 miles is platting. That you can do by state law, but you can't zone them. So all of this language in the municipal code of Rapid City and when you're looking at the state law is based on a recommendation. So when they came to you on September 2nd of 2008 and says, change this map and put a PRD over here on Mark Wortman's lot, it was a recommendation. It was never written in concrete that by the time you annex them, this is law. It wasn't. Now what happens? Mark Wortman comes in to get a building permit. He goes up to the desk, gets his application, takes it home, fills it out, drops it back off, comes back to get his building permit. Well, Mark can't give you one. Why? You got to go get a PRD. Well, why do I need a PRD? I'm not doing anything that I'm not allowed to do under my mobile home residential zoning. Zero. I'm doing everything I am allowed to do under there. Why do I need to send everybody a letter within 250 feet saying, hey, I'm just doing what I'm entitled to do, but I thought I'd spend $500 or $600 I don't have just to tell you. And you people understood that. And so then the action you're actually doing today, if he would be straight with you, is you are removing and revoking what you did on September 2nd of 2008. You're taking that PRD off of all of those lots. So the next Mark Wortman that comes in here can go get a building permit and isn't sent over to get a PRD. Now that's the process that's going on, and that's what's happening. Now, tonight, that's already done. That's almost done. You were told you could get it done on July 7th. I got it done on May 28th. And you all got letters about that, if you read them. What you're doing tonight is giving Mark Wortman back his $250 that he should have never gave the city. His argument is that it's tax dollars. If it's my money and your money, then it's tax dollars. If it's his application fee, I'm not going to call it tax dollars. That's his application fee. And I'll tell you another thing. Let Mr. Preston go back and look. We've given back application fees. I've gotten them back. And Alan Hanks told me that over the years we've given back a lot of application fees. We're in the process right now of giving Herb Teal back his application fee, who is an applicant up in Melody Acres. This has regressed to just a contest that I'd like to call a certain kind of a contest. And this guy does not care who he injures in Melody Acres. And I do. I want their money back. They shouldn't have paid it.
Mr. Freitag.
Okay. Deb, you have the floor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that information. I guess the bottom line is what he's trying to say is not valid.
Never was. When you changed
Bill,
the map, it wasn't
Bill,
valid, and when Mark Wortman did his PRD, it wasn't valid.
Hang on. I turned the mute off. Mr. Freitag, just please understand that I have to, and we're friends, but I have to keep control of the meeting. And when people start interrupting other people, that's when the mics go off and I take control of the meeting again. With that, Alderman Hadcock, you have the floor.
I understand Mr. Freitag's passion because, again, the last meeting, I still had the issue with full disclosure and accountability. Full disclosure is telling people that if this would ever happen, meaning if you would have told people out there that they were doing a PDD, a MHR, and now you guys know what a PRD is, that would have never happened with full disclosure. You can tell, I can tell you right now, if 67 people knew that they were going to pay $250 to $500, it would have never happened. Yes. Now we're telling you, since we know and there's issues with this, we'd like to give the money back. I think Jason does a good job. He's trying to, I understand, protect the city in this sense, but we're trying to find a way, and I still believe this, there can be an interpretation, and I know if there's a will, there's a way. I'm with Weifenbach and Mr. Kroger. With legal interpretation, it seems like we could find something for the mistake that we had done with these 4 people, because it was told by our planning director, which I appreciate, Marcia Elkins, that these 4 weren't needed. So it seems like everybody's trying to do the right thing here, and we can't find a legal interpretation, so we're trying to figure out how we can find it's not valid in order to get their money back. It seems like we can find some interpretation, and that's where we're trying to go here. We're not trying to beat anybody up, and I hopefully we can all understand that the interpretation, the legal interpretation that we're seeing is not the same as what Jason's seeing. I know, and I trust Jason and always have, but I feel with these people that once I saw that application, that it wasn't valid. The main point was that if it wasn't a valid ordinance and the rules weren't followed, well, Jason, if you didn't look, can I ask you a question, Jason? Sorry.
Yep, go ahead,
if you
please.
didn't look at those applications, how do you know it wasn't followed?
Go to Jason Green.
How do you know it was followed? I should say that. Sorry, Jason.
That's right. Jason Green, City Attorney.
Well, it came through all the agendas through the normal process, and the process is pretty structured, so I'm fairly confident in saying that it was followed. But there's one other thing to keep in mind. The fee is an application fee. So it's due at the time the application is submitted. If the application is incomplete, that doesn't violate the requirement to submit the fee.
But what if the applicant and the staff member has made this incomplete? The application is not filled out right by either.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Well, then there would be an argument that the action perhaps is invalid. However, any time to appeal that decision ended 7 days after the Planning Commission took it up. So the time to address that is long past. And even if the application was invalid, the fee was still validly collected.
Okay. Deb, you still have the floor, ma'am.
Well, there's some interpretation. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, we can say it anyway and shut down the case, but I'm going to keep saying. You can say, well, before and after and whatever, but bottom line is, we're telling you that both of them made mistakes, in the sense that one didn't have full disclosure, and the second one is if our staff members can't even fill out an application, how the heck are we supposed to? Let alone with full disclosure and accountability, why the heck would you put a PDD on a MHR with a PRD? I mean, why would it even go through the future land use and go through the MHR, and go through future land use, planning commission, and here, and I'm going to tell you, I did talk to a lady, and she had no idea. And that's maybe my fault, because I checked with her again, and she said they helped her a lot. So when you get this, where's the paper? I have 100 of them, sorry. When you get the paper, and let me ask you all, The city would like to proceed with the rezoning of your property and request that you sign the enclosed PD or planned development destination. Yeah, you have to ask all the questions and everything, but in here, the other one talks about no use district to mobile home district, and the other one talks about, again, planned development destination. When I'm looking at this, this was August 28, 2009, to Herb and Nancy Teal. I'd like to see who can read this and understand what it's saying, and then come back later and say, oh, I'm sorry, you got to do a PRD with that. And it doesn't say cost you $250 to $500 to do a PRD on here. So with full disclosure, do you think if they saw this that they would keep moving forward and wouldn't have said this to anybody? So again, why did a PDD go to a MHR and a PRD, and we're just saying, okay, based on valid ordinance, which we're trying to tell you it's not, because both channels did not follow through, let's help these people and take care of them. Let's do the right thing by them, because we're telling you, Mr. Freitag and I personally went through this process with one of the staff members and found out it wasn't valid. Even though Jason said, he did say, valid ordinance, has to be valid. It's not valid. If you didn't fill it out, both sides didn't fill it out, right? It's not valid. So that's our argument. And he's saying application fees can't be given back. Jason, I believe some of that, but there's got to be some way. Okay, let's call it something else in order to do the right thing by people and do something morally right for the citizens, those 4 citizens, and be done with this. Call it something else. Call it the city council fee for mistakes. I don't care what you call it. Do something to help these people out. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to, I'm going to go to Alderman Sam Quaker, who is not, let's see, no, I take that back. Alderman Quaker spoke. And I'm going to go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach, and then we'll come to Alderman Sam Quaker. Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I still am perplexed on how the city can just put, if the PRD already existed, why did we force every applicant to fill out this form and put their own PRD on their property? Doesn't make any sense to me. But I guess it's a legitimate process somehow along the line. I think that there's a flaw in there, and I'm not sure. These people don't even know what they were filling out when they filled these things out. I know there's developers in here tonight that have probably filled these out and probably haven't met all the requirements on them. There's absolutely no way that these people can meet these requirements that were put forth on these PRDs. They are forced by us to fill out this application to put a PRD on their own property, which already existed. Doesn't make any sense to me if that's the process that we went through. So there's got to be an opportunity in there that this is. And my question to Jason Green, our city attorney, Mr. Mayor, would be, if you so please, we've been talking about this since we've revoked this. What opportunities have you looked at to see where this could be deemed invalid?
Very good. Jason Green.
First of all, well, it's not first, it's a repeat. You haven't revoked anything. The process is ongoing for a change in your comprehensive plan and a change in the zoning. So there's been no revocation. So the question that you're asking is a very simple question. Is it permissible to use public funds to repay application fees? The answer is no.
Jason, I think what the question was, what research have you done to try and find a way to see if there's a possibility of refunding this? Because I can tell you, I've asked him multiple times to look into it, but
I've looked at a number of alternatives that have been suggested, but it's impermissible for me as an attorney to advise a client on how to violate the law. Until I find a legal way to do it, I can't give you advice on how to violate the law, and that's what's being requested here tonight.
Okay. Alderman Weifenbach, you have the floor, sir.
Mr. Mayor, that's not the question I asked. I think it's pretty simple and pretty layman to ask the question, and maybe it's not the city attorney, our city attorney's position to figure out a way to figure out why we did this wrong or how we did this wrong, but I know we did it wrong. I don't know if maybe it's not. I'm not going to keep these people any longer. We can vote on this and then we're going to move forward, because I think the vote is going to say the people want the money back. I represent my people in my ward, and I know they're going to call me up tomorrow and say you got to give them people their money back. I think that's what we represent here tonight. We, as the 8 of us that are here tonight, I represent the people in our wards. We're doing the people's business. We've talked about this for a long time. I think there's invalidities I think this process is backwards to be able to overlay a PRD, because I'm going to come forward with amendments next week to overlay PRDs on everybody in here. And see how, it just doesn't make sense to me. There's something missing. So I would appreciate it if we move forward, I guess, and look for ways to find out the invalidity of this and see if it even makes any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to draw the council's attention one more time back to the issue of the impact fee waivers. And for the record, I wanted to state that the minutes that I'm referring to are from March 3, 2003. March 3, 2003, pages 2 through 4, and page 22. And my recollection, and the minutes back this up, is that the strict reading of the ordinance as it was passed by the voters in the summer of 2002 showed that the impact fees were due for a number of citizens of Rapid Valley. The council made the determination and made the determination that we were not going to collect the impact fees that were for building permits prior to a certain date, even though the strict reading of the ordinance that had been passed by the voters required it. It was contentious. I remember the discussion. I remember the advice that we received from the city attorney at that time, who was not Mr. Green, but Mr. Green was the assistant. But Mr. Altman's advice was, you should not do this. The council on the 7-2 vote did it and did the right thing. I think that there is a similar situation here, and I think that we, with this motion, can make a finding that the process from 2008 was not fair, and that we are going to fix this. And we have spent more than $750 of our time collectively discussing this already. This is a very reasonable thing to do, a very fair thing to do, and I would ask that we approve the motion on the floor and refund these fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Jason Green.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the prior action, what the action was that if people had a building permit before June 7th, that was the effective date of the ordinance that imposed the impact fee. So there would have been no legal authority to collect the fee before June 7th. That's the reason that a refund in those instances was permissible. That's the only reason. But let me add one thing to that. Even if this action, previous action, was illegal, you can't justify action today by saying we did something equally as illegal before and nobody said anything.
Okay, I see no further lights. I think we're probably ready for a vote. We've talked about this quite a bit. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Roll call, please.
Hadcock? Aye. Waugh? Aye. Martinson? Quaker? LaCroy? Olson? Weifenbach? Kroger? That is 6-2.
Okay, motion passes on a 6-2 vote. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item number 100.
Item 100, resolution number 2010-038 to establish a position of airport electrician. My motion is for approval.
I think the recommendation, Karen, was to continue both items number 100 and 101 for 2 weeks. 4 weeks?
4 weeks?
4 weeks. Do we have 6?
In which case, then, my motion would be to continue these for 4 weeks.
Very good. We have a motion and a second, correct? Everyone got a second to continue this for 4 weeks. That will take us to which meeting? That'll take us to the first meeting in June, is that correct? So June 1st? Yes, Jason?
Just a clarification, we have an extra week in May, so it's really not 4 weeks. It'd be clearer if the motion is to continue to the first meeting in June.
Okay. Is that okay?
That would be my motion.
All right with the seconder? Okay. We have a motion and a second to take both items 100 and 101 and continue that to the first city council meeting in June. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'd just like to thank Kevin Tome. We had some discussions today, and we just wanted to take this a little bit further and have him meet with the council members and just gather that information. So I appreciate the help we got from Kevin Tome and his group, his community, I was going to say community action group. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is to continue. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to item 102 under the Public Works Committee items, and Alderman Quaker, could you please read that in?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 102 is approve the appeal of the denial of a request from Centerline for the exception of the Rapid City design standards to allow a non-conforming water service line allowing the same treatment to the west side of the lot that was previously used, approved for the east side of the lot with a covenant agreement with hold harmless language and language that prevents future subdivision of this lot. For the sake of discussion, I move to approve the appeal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 103, please.
May I read 103 through, I think 103 through 105 are all relating to the same?
Yep. Let's see here. Let's just make sure we were right to protest.
They're somewhat different.
I think they're different.
Okay, I'll read them one at a time. Move to authorize mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest to a future assessment for the installation of sidewalk along Elkvale Road and Edwards Street, located at the southwest corner of Edwards Street and Elkvale Road. Move approval per staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval per staff recommendations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 104, please.
Item 104 is to approve with a waiver of right to protest a request to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Edwards Street per city ordinance 1216080 at Dakota Steakhouse lots A and B in Pennington County, South Dakota. Move approval with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval stipulation. Any discussion on that motion? We're dealing with item 104. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. 105, please.
Item 105 is to approve with a waiver of right to protest a request to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Elkvale Road per city ordinance 12.16.080 Dakota Steakhouse lots A and B. Move approval with stipulation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Sam. Let's go to bids. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of bid items this evening. The first one is the Founders Park Sand Volleyball Courts. We received 5 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Quinn Construction Incorporated in the amount of $64,400.
Move approval.
Do we have a second, please? We have a motion and a second to award the bid to Quinn Construction for a grand total of $64,400. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Next item is East St. Patrick Sidewalk. We received 11 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting a bid from Brewer Construction in the amount of $25,261.75.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval and award of bid to Brewer Construction for a grand total of $25,261.75. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Next item is a street rehabilitation project, St. Cloud Street, 5th Street to 7th Street. We received 3 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Simon Contractors of South Dakota Incorporated in the amount of $171,876.55.
We have a motion and a second for approval to award to Simon Contractors of South Dakota, Inc. for a grand total of $171,876.55. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Next item is the Yardway Site Improvement, West Boulevard North. We received 6 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Stanley J. Johnson Concrete Contractors Incorporated, amount of $41,257.25.
We have a motion and a second for approval to award the contract to Stanley J. Johnson Concrete Contractors, Inc. for a grand total of $41,257.25. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Next item is the 2010 roadway pavement marking project. We received the 1 bid as listed. Staff is recommending accepting bid from Traffic Services Company, LLC, for the base bid, alternate number 2, and alternate number 4 for a total of $42,672.88.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to Traffic Services Company, LLC, with the base bid, alternate 2, alternate 4, for a grand total of $42,672.88. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Next item is the sweeper broom refills. We received 4 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from MB Companies for a total of $19,646.
We have a motion and a second to award the bids to MB Companies for a grand total of $19,646. It's a little bit of a stretch for my eyesight. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes.
The last item is the 2010 Water Reclamation Facilities Improvements. We received 5 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from RCS Construction Incorporated, amount of $2,128,968.40, with the understanding that approval must be contingent upon a review and approval of the award by the South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, because this is a state revolving fund program.
Move for approval. We have a motion and a second for approval with the disclaimer for the state.
You want me to? Okay.
No, you don't need to read it in. And that is to award it to RCS Construction, Inc. for a grand total of $2,128,968.40. Any discussion on that motion? Other than the fact that's one heck of a good bid, we've saved almost $500,000 there. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. I think that's it, Mr. Preston. Thank you. Let's see, we're on to council items. Item 113, and this is an update on the Big Sky road conditions, and we will go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Toms, would you mind putting the pictures up that you offered to put up earlier? Would you be willing to do that? And if you'd also be willing to describe briefly for us the...
We'll get you some technical help here.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there.
And if you'd also be willing to describe for us the worsening conditions that you're seeing with the roads and how that's affecting the members of your homeowners association.
Okay, Mr. Tom.
Thank you. There are several streets that we're seeing continued damage to the roadways. I've got a photo here. Thank you. This is a photo of Hanson Street. We're seeing obviously that the pavement is deteriorating in that area. Another photo of that same area on Hanson Street. This is a view looking down Hanson Street, and I think the picture does an okay job of showing what the street looks like there. The center of the street continues to sink. If you look at that street, I think it shows okay, but it's basically taken a V form. If you look on the left-hand side of the picture, you can see that the curb there has sunken in addition to having a V shape going down the length of the road, we also have a V shape going across the road on Hanson Street. This is another view of Hanson Street. This is on DeGeest Road, and again, I hope the picture shows a little bit of what's going on there, but again, we have a lot of settling on that road.
Behind the white cars called Lake Olson.
Again, not a super good picture. This area here is deep enough that you can't see it in the photo, but there's some markings in the pavement where a car has actually scraped the pavement going through that area. And this is, not another view of DeGeest Street, but not as clear as some of the others.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. How many residents, we have some other residents from Big Sky here tonight. If you could just raise your hands. Thank you for coming. You know, this has been an issue for a long time, and I realize that there's pending litigation, Jason, but what can we say to the community and to the individuals out here about what is being done and the commitment that the city has made to resolve this issue?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Well, given that there is pending litigation, I would caution the council about saying much of anything. The fact is that the city is pursuing litigation. You've hired outside counsel to do that, and that litigation is moving forward.
Okay. Alderman Quaker, you have the floor, sir.
One of the concerns that have been brought forward to me, and it was from multiple and credible sources, was that the city was pursuing a settlement, and it's not my understanding that there's been, at least not to my knowledge, has there been any discussion of a settlement. The city is interested in fixing the settling roads, and if there's a full settlement, then perhaps that could be discussed. Otherwise, the litigation needs to proceed, and I just want to make sure that there's a full commitment to proceed with full due diligence to address this issue and to not push for a road district or any other sort of a taxing entity to do what the developer needs to take care of.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Those are ultimately decisions for the council to make. I can't,
Let me ask the obvious question, though, and if I may, Mr. Quaker, I'm going to just, do we have the ability, even if we wanted to, a number of these roads actually lie outside of the corporate limits of Rapid City. We couldn't, other than there, again, typically the only thing that we have is plating jurisdiction outside the corporate limits. So as far as the creation of a road district, the city doesn't have the authority to do that at this time.
I don't believe that the city would have that authority. I think the homeowners probably would if they wanted to pursue that. Sounds like that's not something they're interested in. One other thing that I'd throw out there, I don't believe there are any homeowners that are involved in litigation, and perhaps that's something they would like to explore, is intervening in the currently pending litigation.
Yep. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Are you able to give us an update as to when we can have an update?
Can you give us an update on an update?
Well, we can certainly have some discussion in executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Padcock. You know, Deb, if I could, let's get a motion on the floor just at least to acknowledge, and then I'll let you. Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Sorry about that. Alderwoman Hadcock, you have the floor.
Me quit talking?
It's
Thank
hard.
you, Mayor. I'm going to be nice to you, Jason. Just kidding. We love you, Jason. Anyway, what is the action by the council with this developer? What action did we take, so the people out here know that action?
Jason?
In addition to the currently pending litigation, the council has directed that the city accept no new surety from the developer for any additional projects he does within the platting jurisdiction of the city of Rapid City.
So legally, Jason, can we add anything to that for building or not getting permits or anything like that, that maybe would assure that he does not do any more business until this road, besides just surety, gets finished? Because we already know, I'm sorry, Jason, I'll let you answer that first.
Jason?
I don't know that there's anything else you can do. I don't believe there's any authority to refuse to issue a building permit to someone who meets all the requirements for the issuance of one, or to refuse to approve a final plat if all of the legal requirements of the subdivision ordinance are met. However, anything that might come up that would be discretionary in nature, I think the council would have a lot of ability to look carefully at things like subdivision variances, tax increment districts, things of that nature.
Yep.
And thank you, Jason. The last meeting, there was a lot of things that this developer had brought up, and because of this road, and because of the confidence I don't have in him to follow through, I did not vote for any of those things on there. We've been trying to fix this road, and through litigation, we already know. Bottom line is, I don't feel that there's going to be much done. So again, we asked the council last time, this was brought up by me and some of the other people that were concerned on this council, and through the whole meeting, we didn't shut anything down, really. We said, well, he's not really changing anything, he's not really doing this, he's not really doing that. So bottom line, sometimes I just think we're saying it's okay. We just put one thing on you on surety, but bottom line is again, if there's a will, there's a way in order to get things done. And unfortunately, we're in litigation, and we already know what's going to happen. What usually happens with litigation. And Lloyd LaCroix said it right last time. It's going to be in court for a long time when we already know. You guys already tried this the first time. If we could help you guys and we could get these roads overlaid, Robert, could you tell us what you told us at the last meeting with these roads and what would have to be done and what probably would be the cost? And this would be to all the taxpayers.
Mr. Ellis?
The exact dollar amount escapes me. I know it was several hundred thousands, maybe approaching over $1 million, but you would have to essentially tear out the street that's there and rebuild it. You can't patch this street back together. It needs to be completely reconstructed, and it's a very substantial cost.
And good language, that lies the problem in trying to help people when you have to use $1 million of taxpayers for a guy that developed the road, and we're in litigation and can't move forward. So believe it, we've been trying really hard. This full council has been trying to move ahead on this, and at this, it's like our hands are tied as well. And know that we do care what's happening and how things are done, and we have changed some of the rules and regs on surety and some of the rules on bonding. And again, how this happened, how the $500,000 or $1 million bond come to pass where it never was used, I can't tell you that answer, but, and I wasn't here at that time. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that with this council, when you're trying to, it's not the same as business. You can't just go out there and say, come on now, fix this. Because I wouldn't do business with you again if you did this to me in my business. If it was that easy, take my word for it, guys, we'd have it done. But it's unfortunate that the only thing legal we can do is surety. And I can tell you, this council has tried to put different things on there, but I'm telling you, I haven't voted for any of these things that have came up, not because maybe they're not right at this time, but I'm not willing to take that chance again. So we are trying for you, and if we could do the next step, I don't know what that would be. If this council has any suggestion again, or a staff member, what's the next step? Because legally, our hands are tied. And if I could find legal interpretation in order how to make that different, I'll tell you, we would look. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I agree with Mr. Quaker and Ms. Hadcock on this. I mean, the council, I believe, has tried their best to do this. I think, part of what this is, I guess, I'd have to ask Jason, but it seemed like the city's responsibility wasn't really to go forward with the lawsuit. That wasn't our responsibility, but we took it on at the council because we felt to help the residents out. And I think that's a substantial help as far as cost-wise. Otherwise, you guys would have to collect a lot of money, and you've seen how long it's gone on. And we actually sent it out to private counsel to try to expedite it and so forth, but it's just a tough call. But I think if there was some way we could help you out, it's been on the agenda. We bring it up it seems like almost monthly. We're trying to get it moving forward. We're doing the best again. The courts and the paperwork going back and forth. I definitely understand your guys' frustrations. It's been going on for a long time. I wish there was more that we could do for you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question for Jason or not? Okay.
My question was, I was just at the beginning of it, I don't think we really had the legal, weren't obligated to initiate the lawsuit. Since part of it was in city limits and part of it's not, I guess.
Go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't believe the council had a legal obligation to initiate the lawsuit. I think it was done in good faith to attempt to fully enforce your subdivision ordinance.
That's what
Very good, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding, and someone correct me if we're wrong, but the city has platting jurisdiction over Rapid Valley, and our inspectors inspected this road.
Let's go to Jason Green, the City Attorney.
I would assume that's true, but I don't know that for a fact. I suspect that we did some inspection. Ultimately, though, it falls to the engineer who stamps the plans for responsibility on this. The city's never accepted these roads because they don't meet our standards.
That's the point I was getting to. We have jurisdiction out there, and I appreciate someone bringing this forward to make sure you guys aren't out there alone on your own island and understand that we're trying to get something done. We have jurisdiction of platting over there, and my understanding is that these were inspected. They didn't pass inspections. The surety bond, as mentioned earlier, wasn't collected upon. So there is a little bit of, I think, obligation felt by the council and the city of Rapid City to move this lawsuit forward. So, and the residents out there, we understand that you feel like you may be on an island, but trust us as we move forward. If this is any information that we have available, if you call us or call Jason in his office, we'll give you that information as we can. So, and I wish there was more that we could do tonight, and I know that's easier said than done. So, but I appreciate this being brought forward and filling you guys in. Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? The motion on the floor is to acknowledge. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just one more thing. I heard there's a show out there, there's a Ferrari guy that owns a Ferrari, and they all sit in the middle of the street at a guy's garage and see how long his Ferrari's going to stay in shape on this road. So there's bets out there how long it'll last before it falls apart or has some major damage. So when you're having things like that on your road, and it's all fun and games in one sense, and the other, it's absolutely horrible. That's just appalling. So I just can't understand, and I will never understand. When I do something, I try to build it, or I try to do it to the best of my abilities, and if I did something wrong, I'd correct it, and that's all we're asking from this developer. Please do what's right and morally right by this roads and your development. So we'd appreciate that, and that's all we're asking by the city and by the community in Big Sky. Do what's right, go in there and fix your mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the council? Any further
Mayor,
discussion?
would it be appropriate to address the council?
Typically not. The public comment period, if someone has a specific question, they certainly can ask that, but the public comment period was quite a while ago, and we did call for that, so unless the council specifically overrides that procedure. But I see there is a light on. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. If you could ask a specific question, please.
Mr. Tom, did you have any closing comments?
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the proper forum. I think one thing that we would be interested to understand is, should the city's litigation be successful, being as we're not within the corporate boundaries of the city, we're trying to understand what our options are as far as getting these roads fixed. And I guess the question that I would have for the city attorney or for the council would be, you know, what ability does the city have to address this problem? You know, assuming that the litigation goes through and a settlement is reached and some monetary value is awarded, would the city have then the ability to apply that to roads that are outside the corporate boundaries of the city?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be happy to visit with Mr. Toms offline about the details on the litigation and how that might all come to fruition.
Okay. You think it should be offline, though?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that.
Thank
Get
you.
together with the city attorney. Let's go to Sam Quaker.
Just a closing comment to think about, and there might be some who disagree with me on this, but I think before your homeowners association considers road districts or other options, I think you know, approaching the city and asking for annexation, if the city is willing to consider that, would probably be best. I mean, I opposed annexation a while back because I didn't want to be responsible for the roads. But there may be other advantages to annexation as well, and those might be options to explore. And I realize that that's and I'm not saying forced annexation. I'm saying if your association would come to the city and make that request, even if the request ultimately doesn't go through, it would bring everybody to the table to allow some very important discussions to be had. So it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 113A, which is a report on Hangman's Hills marker. Alderman Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Very brief comments on this, and also a thank you to everyone who assisted with this. This is something that I brought up in the fall of 2004, and you know, got hung up a bit. Pardon the pun. That was weak, perhaps, but the process was hung up for a long time, and I want to thank the mayor and Marcia and all the other folks who got involved and helped out with getting this historical marker up. So just want to say thank you for the work that that everyone involved did with this. This is something very important from a historical preservation standpoint. My generation calls this Skyline Drive or Dinosaur Hill, and there are many others who still remember this being Hangman's Hill. So I think having that historical marker up there is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you that are interested in going seeing the marker, I would just ask that you wait a couple weeks, because I just found out this morning that our brand new marker got vandalized and somebody stole our marker. Yeah, so we will have a new plaque in place within a couple weeks, but and we will secure it a little bit stronger. But somebody evidently literally took a sledgehammer and chipped the concrete out to get the plaque. So Jerry Cole will be ordering a new one, and we'll figure out a foolproof way and probably put up a security camera. So with that, thank you, everyone. Can we have a motion to acknowledge?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 114. Do we have any updates on 2012? Any questions from the council? Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give the report that Mr. Chapman and myself met with the 2012 committee members, and through the training session, they broke out into their 3 committees, and I believe 2 of them at this point have elected their committee chairmen, and they're starting to hold meetings. I think the first one I know of is going to be on Friday. They're moving forward, and hopefully we can have some public hearings by the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I missed my first meeting. I was in Billings, Montana, looking at some Year of Unity things and some other stuff to do with the city. But I don't know if I'm not getting it on my emails or what, but I don't know when the next meeting and stuff is. So if we could have an update, who's our committee chair and some other things, and those numbers for me to contact and probably other people, that would be helpful. Thank
Okay,
you.
really gets done. Any further discussion? The motion is to acknowledge. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 114A, which is report on the petitions. Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my obligation to report to the council that we received petitions on April 30th, 2010 regarding ordinance 5591, titled an ordinance establishing downtown business improvement district, essentially a referral of that ordinance. The report is that we did a review and determined there are 3,356 valid petition as per the review. The review is one the city finance office conducts. It is not one we go back and check whether or not they are registered voters, but we just check some things like the dates and legibility, et cetera. Thank you.
Okay, so we need a motion to acknowledge. We have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. 114B.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for directions on setting an election regarding referral of ordinance 5591. The council has 10 days to set a special election if they so desire. Otherwise, this matter would be referred to the general election or the next municipal election.
And your recommendation is?
That we set a special election on June 29th, which is the same time as a probable runoff for the city election.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have a motion and a second to set the special election on June 29th, which would coincide with the potential special election. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Are you able to say now, Jim, what date the absentee ballots would be available for that, since a lot of people will probably be on vacation?
Mr. Preston?
I can't say for sure what exact date it was, but generally, once the initial election is over, we will try to get those ballots to the printer. Of course, we've got to proof those and get them back, so I would hope week to 10 days.
After the first election?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We did change the process a bit last year so that there wouldn't be an unnecessary delay, so that we could go ahead and order the ballots without having to wait for a council meeting to do that, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And what Alderman Quaker is referring to is typically the council will actually caucus.
Canvass.
Canvass. I'm thinking my legislative days. Canvass the votes, and we typically don't order the ballots until actually we canvass it. But in the last couple of elections, we've went ahead, and as soon as the very next day, we actually ordered the ballots. So we'll make sure that happens again. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out one other aspect of this matter so the council is aware of it. Within 5 days of the filing of the petition, any citizen could come in and challenge the validity of the signatures. That time frame would expire at close of business this Friday. It seems unlikely that there would be a sufficient number of challenges given the total number of signatures in this case. So I just want to point that out in case there would be a successful challenge, so there would not be enough signatures for the vote. We'd come back and ask for council to undo this action, but that seems very unlikely.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is to set the special election for June 29th. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the public hearing items. These are items 115 through 137. 115 through 137. Chair will look for a motion to open the public comment periods, and 115 through 137 inclusive, please. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I do have a number of speaker request forms. We'll start with the first one. Robert Hatch, item number 128. Item number 128, please. There again, just a reminder that we do time this. There'll be 3 minutes. So, Mr. Hatch, if you come forward, identify yourself for the public record, then the floor is yours, sir.
My name's Robert Hatch. I live at 222 Patton Street. And the zone requesting will be affecting my property directly because it's right on the northwest corner of our property. And we're opposed to the zone changes, and I have a list of residents in the area that are also opposed to it. And we already have, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to build there, apartment building or whatever. And we already have numerous apartment buildings on that block, and we've had quite a few problems with tenants. What was it? Stonecrest Apartments. It borders are right on our north borderline there, and there's no alleyway there. And there's balconies over there, overlooks our property. We've had lots of problems with tenants throwing garbage and beer cans and stuff over the fence. And we've contacted the police department numerous times, and we've just had lots of problems with tenants and stuff. So we're opposed to the rezoning ordinance.
Okay.
And I don't know.
If you would like, you can pass that down, and we'll make sure the council gets a chance to see that. Thank you. We certainly appreciate it. Let's see, have a speaker request form from, it looks like Jerry Nelson, but that was if there's only questions. Larry, did you wish to speak? Is Larry here? Here again, Mr. Nelson, if you would just please identify yourself for the record. And this is dealing with items 128 and 134.
Yeah, this is Larry Nelson, and we're just thinking about putting a fourplex on there, so, I don't know. That's about all I get to say.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, I'm sorry, could you come back up? I don't think the council quite heard you. If you could just talk into the mic just a little bit closer.
Okay. I'm Larry Nelson, and we're thinking about putting a fourplex on there. So.
Okay. Yep. And, okay, very good. Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Dennis Redden on item 130. Item 130, everyone. And Mr. Redden, if you would just identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours, sir.
My name is Dennis Redden, and live at 3634 West Main. And I would like to talk about snow removal at 3914, which is a property that my son owns, but he's in the Air Force, and so I'm managing it for him. And I would, and now I understand that I will be assessed $170 for snow removal. I have several renters in the home, and they did not shovel the walks, and I'm asking that the renters be billed instead of the owner, and that's my request.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll be coming back to this. Okay, we also have a speaker request form from Bob Drew, item 131.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Bob Drew. I represent Eagle Ridge Apartments here in Rapid City.
You know what, Bob? Okay. Just want to make sure I did this right.
Okay.
I think we actually have a separate public hearing for this. Nope, I guess not. We're good. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
Good to go?
Yep, you're good
All
to
right.
go. We'll start your time over. Maybe even give you a couple extra seconds.
I don't think I have that much to say. Well, I guess we started our project called Eagle Ridge about 3-4 years ago, and we got 96 apartments built. This is about phase 2 of those apartments. Today, those 96 apartments are full. We're running an average 97% occupancy on those. We provide affordable housing for people. And the folks that live there are service folks that work in our community. In fact, our property manager was in the hospital recently for a stay, and 4 or 5 of our residents actually waited on her and helped her while she was in the hospital. So these are the folks that live there. My daughter lived there for 2 years. She worked as a barmaid over at Boston's for a while. So we provide affordable housing for folks. And so we're full. There's a need for more. We need to build these next 60 apartments. The reason we're here is because we got delayed in our financing. You know, we had a 2-year extension on our PRD, and we just ran out of time because our financing just didn't get done. We're just about through it now. We should be breaking ground sometime in August this year. So that's an update on our progress. So, you know, you guys basically approved this project 2 years ago. Nothing's changed. We haven't changed any of the designs. We haven't changed any of the things that you saw then. And when it's done, you know, the land to our west, the border to our west, will be completed. All of the erosion control will be done. All of the landscaping will be in. The fences between us and our neighbors will be there. And we've agreed with all of our neighbors on how we're going to do that and the procedure that we're going to do to get that done. We've held meetings with all of the neighbors that border our property. We've probably had 8 to 10 different meetings with them as we proceeded through this process. So, you know, we're a little bit late because we had some time getting our banking together. So we're asking for your support to extend us again so we can complete Phase 2. We were the only affordable housing project approved by the South Dakota Housing Authority last year. It was a year ago now that they approved us after 3 years of application. So it does take some time to get this stuff done. It's not a perfect process, but we're doing our best. So we worked with the neighbors. We've been there for them. We've got agreements with them in place to move forward, and they're okay with it. Some of them, I don't know that any of them are here tonight, the ones that we have the agreements with, but we work closely with city staff, with Marcia and with Vicki, and we walked the walk with them, and we made sure that they were happy. So we've done our part. Again, we're just asking for your support tonight. So I thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Dan Baker, item 131. Very good, Mr. Baker. If you just identify yourself for the public record, then the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dan Baker. I live in Rapid City. This project is in my neighborhood. Our neighborhood has been negatively impacted by this development for a substantial amount of time. We've been dealing with a lack of landscaping from the Eagle Ridge development, and I would ask that this issue of landscaping be dealt with before approving any further development at this site. I would also request that this commission or chamber takes responsibility to ensure that all of the stipulations are completed and in a timely manner with firm deadlines. And I would ask that there's some sort of bonds put in place so if we're not left with the situation that we've been in for the last 2 or 3 years of the landscaping and that not being done. And I would ask that one of the stipulations you put on this, you have some sort of surety bond on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. We also have a speaker request form from Tom Lessim. Am I close, Tom? There again, sir, if you just identify yourself for the public record, let me know how close I got to your last name.
Fairly close. Tom Lasine. I actually live right across the street from Mr. Baker. I've lived there for over 4 years, and I'm a little bit more of a direct approach tonight to this subject because I'm in basically direct opposition to it, and I'll explain why. First and foremost is that when the first phase of Eagle Ridge was built, and evidently I'm outside of the 250 feet boundary of that, nothing was ever disclosed to me that low-income apartments were going to be built there. There have been numerous problems as this time frame has gone by with the current situation of the tenants that they're there and some of the things that have gone on. One of the things that Mr. Baker failed to mention is that they had asked for crime statistics on these apartments because from what we are told, this is one of the highest response areas in the city by the Rapid City Police Department. I can tell you that I've had to go down to the end of my street, which is at the corner of Enchantment Road and Stumer Road, and pick up dirty diapers that were left off of the back of a car from one of the tenants that are there. So while Mr. Drew tells us about the sterling condition and the high values of these people, I have to somewhat contest that. One of the other things that we deal with is the traffic, and this has been discussed at another meeting recently regarding the Walmart project, which is a completely separate issue. But with both the traffic through there and the proposed addition of this Phase 2 to Eagle Ridge, we're only going to have more traffic coming through our residential neighborhood to this apartment complex, which I believe, I don't know why they can't be directed down Fifth Street to come over off of Fifth Street, which is more of a direct route to those apartments. Completion, Mr. Drew says they've been delayed in their completion. However, I believe the landscape, the plan that was proposed for this originally was in the original plan, so why it took 2 years to get to this point, but now that they have a request for another Phase 2, that they all of a sudden think that they can complete this. I know many of the people that abut the property to the west that have had problems selling their property, or they're not happy with the conditions of the land that abuts to their property. Unfortunately, I see that some of those people are not here tonight. I know that one other person in our neighborhood that's in direct opposition to this had to go to Sioux Falls because of an ill parent. So I believe there's a lot more opposition to this than there are people here tonight. The last thing that I would like to address is the property values. Both of the people that are here in proposing this Phase 2 are in the real estate industry, as am I. I deal with the real estate and the form of lending in this town, and I can tell you what happens with property values. We've already sustained some of a reduction in property values in certain segments, those being the neighborhood that adjoins this area, while at the same time the value of having these low-income apartments is going to do nothing to help that. I would ask Mr. Drew or Mr. Evans if they were going to advertise any of their properties that are on Stumer Drive or Stumer Road, would they put that in the paper saying, please come to our 4-bedroom, 2-bath, custom-built home that adjoins low-income properties. Location, location, location. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from, well, I'm going to get this, Kwasny. It's been a tough night for names. How close?
Actually, that's real good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Mike Kwasny. I run a business on Mount Rushmore Road. I'm a member of the Mount Rushmore Group.
And he's talking, and Mike, just so for everyone's reference, we're talking about item number 137.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Okay. The Mount Rushmore Group is comprised of business people, residents, community members interested in the viability, safety, and aesthetics of Mount Rushmore Road. We believe signage is beneficial for businesses, the community, and the traveling public. We also know that too much of a good thing can become a bad thing for businesses, the community, and the traveling public in terms of safety, aesthetics, and even economics. As Rapid City continues to grow, expand, and change, we applaud the efforts of the mayor and the council as you take a thoughtful look at signage, and in particular off-premise billboards, and how they should look in our community in the future. Currently, the sign and billboard industry have effectively worked within the city regulations, and that is certainly the case with Lamar and the request before you tonight. We appreciate the people at Lamar have been forthcoming with their plans for billboards on Mount Rushmore Road. Under normal circumstances, the Mount Rushmore Road Group would not object to their request to change the billboard on Mount Rushmore Road to a digital sign. This is the one by the Superloop. Because it is not a variance request, they are acting within the law. However, the renovation of Mount Rushmore Road is slated to begin in 2014. It has been a long time coming. For several years, the state, the City of Rapid City, and the Rushmore Road Group have worked together to develop this important corridor into a roadway everyone can be proud of. We don't want to do anything that might discourage or become a stumbling block for the future enhancement and development. Please understand, our position is not to control signage, but rather to take a part in the future plans of our community, to be involved in the new direction the City of Rapid City is trying to accomplish. The new look, we might say. We are on the verge of changing our downtown area dramatically, and we feel we can help enhance this look by making the entrance to downtown more appealing. Imagine, if you will, that Mount Rushmore Road is a roadway, or perhaps considered a scenic byway, to downtown Rapid City, as people enter from the south. And its name indicates a scenic byway to one of our country's main attractions, the Shrine of Democracy, Mount Rushmore. With that said, should we not take this opportunity to make the most of our opportunity? We're concerned that off-premise billboards, in particular in such a hot topic across the country, has been actually since Lady of Lady Bird Johnson. We are concerned that scenic byways and other designations grants we may seek might run into stumbling blocks, or costs of buying them out could be cost prohibitive. Conceivably, a digital billboard could cost more than a land acquisition. The good news is Lamar and other sign companies that can continue to sell and change out ads while that moratorium is in place. The bad news, of course, is that there are some sign companies that have literally stopped in signage business. This is affecting their revenues and that of their clients.
Mike, I just ask you to wrap up, if you would, please.
Our hope is that Mount Rushmore Road reconstruction project be one that we can take great pride in for many years to come. We have this time to get it right. Again, we invite the sign companies or any other parties to bring their input to the table, to take pride in the outcome of this project with us. Together, much can be accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We also have a speaker request form on item 136 and 137 from Terry Olson.
Good evening, Terry Olson. I'm the real estate manager for Lamar Advertising here in Rapid City. Mr. Mayor, do you want me to speak on 136 and 137 together, or just on 136?
Why don't you both together, please?
Okay, do I get 3 minutes or 6 then?
Typically 3.
Okay. The billboard, 136 is a billboard in Amos and La Crosse. Prior to 2002, Lamar had a wooden billboard there with wooden poles and 4 10-by-28 wooden faces. In September 22nd, 2002, we applied for a conditional use, and we received a conditional use to rebuild the billboard as it currently is, according to Rapid City Sign Code, monopole, 250 square feet. March 7, 2008, we applied for and received a permit over the counter. It means by over the counter is that I went into the city planning director, dropped my application off. The next day I came back, picked my permit up. I received that permit over the counter to replace a 240-foot south face into a 240 square foot digital. We have then applied, we are now applying to put a digital on the north side. We were told we had to go through the conditional use process. Acting on staff recommendation, the planning and zoning denied this request, a request that is now before the City Council. The staff recommendation for denial was based on safety. There's 2 issues before the sign task force. One is dealing with sign credits, and the other deal with an off-premise. Safety is not mentioned. We also received a permit over the counter for a digital at 5th and Omaha. We changed out over 150 faces with permits over the counter with a 20% reduction in size. According to the information the sign task force, that 30,000 square feet of billboard space has been eliminated in Rapid City since 2002. And I'm sure Lamar probably has 95% of that. October 21st of 2009, the Sign Code Board unanimously approved a new off-premise structure and digital to be built by a landowner 1,000 foot north at Amos and La Crosse. All digital billboards are not the same. Ours don't blink, flash, and scroll. This billboard complies with all Rapid City and South Dakota state regulations. The billboard at 1604 Mount Rushmore Road is very, very similar, except that billboard was 1,248 square feet. We received a variance from the Side Code Board of Appeals. That billboard currently is 62% smaller. At the same time, we received a digital permit. The Lamar is now applying to remove the north face, 240 square feet, and install the same size digital similar to the south face. There will be no additional structural changes. Again, we received a permit for Fifth and Omaha. The safety factor has been used quite a bit. There's no data that really actually supports that safety is an issue. The safety issue is not before the Sign Code Task Force. As simple as how many sign credits should be surrendered to receive a digital permit. I'll be available for questions later. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request from Doug Rumpka, items 136 and 137.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'll be very brief. I just want to state Lamar's position on this, and we feel that we've applied for these permits prior to the moratorium being implemented, and we don't feel we should be required to meet any of the new guidelines established by the Billboard Task Force. However, to show good faith, Lamar is willing to surrender sign credits at this point to expedite this process and get these digitals installed for our client, which is Coca-Cola Bottling Company. They have been chosen as only one of 20 test markets around the entire country for this special project, which is quite an honor for them. To date, they are among the last of those 20 markets to be up and running. And with the summer tourism season upon us, we ask that you please support this and grant us the conditional use permits. And I want to thank you, and I hope you to be able to answer any questions you may have later when we're discussing these items. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Deb Baker, item 131. Item 131, everyone. Good evening, Deb. If you just identify yourself for the record, then the floor is yours.
I'm Deb Baker, and I live at 325 Stoomer. And we strongly object to more apartments over there. If you guys would drive through that place, you would see their babies are playing in their driveways. There's one little tiny piece of playground equipment there. One. For all of these kids that are in there, and they want to build 5 more. When we drove through there today, there's kids throwing their basketballs up against the garage because there's no place for them to play. They're through our neighborhood all the time, and they're small kids. These are unsupervised, very small kids. I would request that you at least continue this so that we can get a police report so we can see how taxing this is going to be for the Rapid City Police Department. 5 more of these buildings, 60 more units. They're there all the time. We would request that you guys at least continue this. We're not sure how we're going to be guaranteed they're going to do the 17 stipulations that they've been told they have to do. How are we going to be guaranteed that? Nobody can answer that question for us. We would just ask that you maybe think this through and maybe drive up there and see this place that he thinks is so wonderful. I mean, when you got babies playing out in driveways, that's not so wonderful. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Deb. Do not have any additional speaker request forms. Does anyone else wish to speak? And we're dealing with items 115 through 137 inclusive. Okay, if not, we will move on. And just so you know, at this point, we do leave the public hearing open. This is one point that we do leave the public hearing open. We are on to the continued public hearing consent items. This is items 115 through 125. 115 through 125. And I'm going to look to Marcia and see if we need to have any of those pulled. How about from the council? If so, please turn on your light. Seeing none, the chair would look for a motion to approve the continued public hearing consent items 115 through 125 per the recommendations printed in the agenda. Okay. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's to continue these items, 115?
Yes. Yep, these are all continuations. Looks like they're all continued to the May 17, 2010 meeting.
Okay, I have a question for Marcia.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question,
There's
please.
a couple particular items on here that affect, let me see, the applicant, I believe, is THF Stone Ridge, the Walmart area there. The rezoning applicant, is that consistent with what we've been seeing on the maps that we've looked at, the plating that we've seen lately?
Marcia?
Yes, with the one exception that one of the requests, actually, as it's being presented to Planning Commission, is for a smaller area than within this boundary, so. we
Which
would-
item is that, Marcia? Mr. Mayor.
I'm looking here. Marcia, which one is that?
I'd have to look at them each to, it's one of the general commercial ones.
You know, it's not that important right now. I can catch up to you. I just want to make sure.
Get you the number.
Right. Thank you.
Yep, all these items are to be continued to the May 17th, 2010 City Council meeting. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the continuation motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued public hearing consent items. Chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing on items 115 through 137 inclusive, please.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the consent public hearing items. These are items 126 through 130 inclusive. Marcia, do we need any of these to be pulled? Okay. How about from the council? We're dealing with item 126 through 130 inclusive.
130, you said, Mayor?
Yes. 130 inclusive. Anyone wish to pull any of those items? Okay, let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix. Item 128, thank you. Any others? Any others? Chair would look for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items, items 126 through 130, inclusive with the exception of 128. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
The man that asked the question about his son, did we pull that one off?
No, you didn't. 130. I was hoping someone was going to
Okay,
catch that.
thank you. I appreciate that 130 is pulled. Did we already
Okay.
vote on that?
Is that all right with the motion maker?
Yes.
And is that all right with the seconder? Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. We are dealing with the consent calendar, items 126 through 130, with the exception of 128 and 130. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 128, please. Kieran, can you read that in?
128, approve a request by Larry Nelson for an amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from low-density residential to medium-density residential on property located at 229 Lindbergh Avenue. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes, I am.
Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
In all the discussion that I've heard in regard to this particular item, the consideration was that Patton Street became the divider. If you look, those of you who've taken a look at the item on your link, you will know that on Lindbergh and on the street that's running the other direction, there's a lot of multiple residential dwellings. And so the discussion was that Patton becomes the separating street, so everything south of Patton then would continue to be single-family dwelling in the interests of the neighborhood. But it did appear that Lindbergh already had a number of multiple residential dwellings, and that this seemed appropriate for the neighborhood.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I brought up the field on this, and I have to agree with Ms. Olson on this, but I think the applicants who brought a petition forward had left. And
That's true.
And so I guess, as Ms. Olson said, Patton is kind of like the divider, and I know this area fairly well, but I guess I would like to make a substitute motion to continue this for 2 weeks to give me a chance to talk to some of the people who had signed on this and see what their concerns are.
Okay, this is the fun part.
I couldn't do that.
You couldn't do that?
I couldn't do that. I didn't say that.
Thank you.
Larry. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. For those of you, typically, the rule is you cannot speak prior to a continuation motion because it, in essence, limits the discussion. So if you're going to make the continuation motion, you need to do up front, and then you can talk to the continuation motion. With that, we have a motion to continue for 2 weeks and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In view of a lot of discussion that has gone on this evening, I think I'm in support of the continuation motion. I think it is important that those who are in the adjacent properties have an appropriate opportunity to speak publicly about their concerns.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item for 2 weeks. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 130, please.
Item 130. Excuse me. Approve resolution levying assessment for the cleanup of miscellaneous property. And I would move approval, but I would certainly like some discussion about the possibility of accepting the request for Mr. Redden concerning his son, particularly if it's possible to bill. Okay, that's not a possibility? My question. Okay. In which case, then my motion would be for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval, and I'm going to go to Jason Green just so he can explain. I know the reason is the assessments by state statute can only be applied to the property owner.
That's correct, Mayor, and this is the assessment for the abatement of a nuisance, in this case sidewalk, as I understand it, that wasn't shoveled. Any charge to the renters would have to be done by the landlord through the lease or through some other mechanism, but it's not something that the city has the legal authority to do.
Okay, Karen, you still have the floor if you'd like it.
With that, I believe the motion on the floor should be supported.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just want to ask if Mr. Rodine understands what Jason is telling him at this time about our state statute on how we assess properties. Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming.
Let's go to Alderman Ron Weichenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask a question on the same line. I'm not sure what basis he was asking us to bill the tenant, and I'm not sure that I understand. Maybe I could ask Mr. Tome if this has been I mean, I don't think that people just get levied this right out. I mean, you would have to go out of your way to get this this is the first time I've seen it in 3 years in a cleanup area or a sidewalk area issued to a landlord. So I know that we've recently strengthened those ordinances just to address issues like this. So I would ask Mr. Tome if he is familiar with this particular.
Yeah, let's go to Mr. Tome. Kevin Tome, Community Resource Director.
Yeah, I don't have the particulars with me on their case, but in a general sense, we don't go out and just abate a property on the first violation or first notice. We've been using the door hangers, which is a tool that you approved and we brought forward to you here about 6 months ago as a way to notice people and give them notification of their violations. So, we do due diligence first and then move on to abate if we have to.
Thank you.
Yep. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar, and we are on to the non-consent public hearing items. These are items 131 through 137. And let's see, Karen, if you go ahead and read item 131 in, please.
An appeal of a planning commission's decision on a request by Forefront Design Incorporated for Eagle Ridge Properties, LLC, for a major amendment to a planned residential development on lots located at 121 Stumer Road, and my motion is for approval with stipulations. And then I have a question.
Okay. Do we have a second, please? Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
The part that seems to me the most distressing is in regard to the landscaping, which has not been completed. It seems to me very reasonable that part should be finished before this project moves forward. And I would like to ask our Growth Management Director, Marcia Elkins, how this stipulation, how it fits into the calendar or schedule of events that happens in regard to this property and the next phase.
Marcia?
If you'll note on the map on the wall, there's a black line that goes through the middle of the gray parcel. That's the phasing line between Phase 1, which is on the eastern half, and the Phase 2. The developer has not moved forward with Phase 2. Again, they're outside the 2-year time frame because that was approved in 2005. And the area that has largely not been landscaped is within that Phase 2 area. That being said, I would draw your attention to stipulation number 4, I believe it is, which is a somewhat unusual stipulation that deals with the landscaping and fencing that's required along the western boundary. And there's some very tight timeframes that have been identified in that are tied to the issuance of a building permit rather than to completion or issuance of a certificate of occupancy. You typically see that the landscaping, fencing has to be in before the certificate of occupancy is issued. In this case, because of the concerns of the neighbor and discussions that have gone on, it's tied to within a few days of the issuance of the building permit. And I'm sorry I don't have my computer in front of me right now to quote that, but I believe it's stipulation number 4.
That it is. Karen, you still have the floor, ma'am.
So what you're telling me is this is additional. The word pressure is probably not the right word, but this would be an additional requirement that landscaping be done in this Phase 2 prior to or within a very short time frame in order for building permits to be issued. And you're saying 90 days?
Here, I can read it for you. It says, "Construction of the fence shall begin within 1 week and shall be completed within 30 days of the issuance of a building permit. In addition, all landscaping located along the west lot line shall be planted within 90 days of the issuance of a building permit."
And Marcia, how does I guess my question is, landscaping is very subject to the weather, and so if I'm hearing something about August, does that still appropriately, how does that fit in with this complying with stipulation number 4?
Marcia?
Again, that's a very difficult issue to try to time that. Again, we have little control of the weather, as does the applicant. However, we do not want to see this site left open for another winter season. There are retaining walls that have to be completed before the landscaping can be done, and so it's trying to find that balancing act. So the original conversations were about them starting construction in June, which would have put us into that 90-day time frame in September. Actually, September and October are fairly good months to try to install landscaping. So, alternatively, you might want to tie this to a date specifically if you wanted to try to lock that in. But you are correct in identifying that that could be a problem if they don't pull their building permit until, say, November. Then they have a very short time frame to get that done.
Karen, you still have the floor.
If you were making a suggestion based on the conversation that is had, I mean, I do understand the neighbor's concern that this has not been done, and obviously this is a very nice residential neighborhood who I think the city generally has an interest in making sure that their land values remain and their property values remain high, and that the neighborhood is happy with themselves as a neighborhood. And so how would we change the dates that might bring greater pressure to have this done in a more timely fashion?
Marcia?
You could do as has been suggested and require that they post a landscape bond up front rather than at the end of the process, which is unusual. And you could also tie it to a date specific and say that the landscaping needed to be installed by, pick a date, September 1st, which would give the city, again, 30 days to get that landscaping installed if you had surety posted. That's a very tight time frame, and again, it's all dependent on their financing and getting this project moving forward. Otherwise, they would be sitting a year until we could issue a building permit in the following season. And the applicant may wish to comment on that.
And if we were to make that change, would it require an amendment to the stipulation or additional language?
I believe an amendment would be appropriate if that's what you're trying
So
to
that would be to
accomplish.
offer an amendment to this stipulation in
Yes.
terms of the landscaping? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Marcia, if I could, Mayor, ask Marcia a question. Did the applicants on Phase 1 finish all of their, or follow all of their stipulations and finish all those stipulations according to their plan, Phase
Marcia?
1 plan?
I've not sat down and gone through that specifically, but I'm also not aware of any specific violation that exists in Phase 1. The area that's not developed, that's open, that doesn't have seating on it, is in Phase 2.
Okay, so the landscape, basically, we're saying is in Phase 2 that the concerns were about.
Marcia?
If I might, the landscaping has been installed within the Phase 1 area.
Yes.
It's along the western placements. Again, you're going to need to do grading to put those buildings in, put retaining walls in Phase 2, so the developers not move forward with that landscaping. Ideally, we'd like to see that all seeded. It's very poor soils out there. They had done some site seeding. I'm not sure that they'd done the entire area, but obviously it didn't take.
I guess my bottom line is I would like to be, if we could, reassured that Phase 1 has been followed through and all those stipulations been met before we let people build again on a second area. And if those were, that would make it easier for me to make that decision. Number 2, if I could ask the police chief, based on calls and some of the concerns of the neighbors, can you tell me if this is one of the highest crime rate areas that has been talked about up here on the frontier?
Let's go to Chief Allender.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't give that information off the cuff here tonight, but I can certainly get it back to the Mayor and Council very quickly this week.
I guess that's where I'm going with a couple of these things. Number 1, Council, I think it would be appropriate to make sure all the stipulations in Phase 1 are done and that some of these concerns of the neighbors have been met with some of the crime rates and other things, that maybe we can put more, if we have to, stipulations on helping clean this area up, and if there is an issue, sorry, I should say it that way, and how we can take those concerns into consideration in Phase 2. So I would, I guess I can't make the motion to continue now, can I?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
But someone else can. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
So if I make a motion.
If you make the motion to continue, then you can speak, but it needs to be specifically to the continuation motion.
I'll make a motion to continue for 30 days.
Okay, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to continue this, and I assume what we're actually talking about is the first meeting in June.
That's correct.
Because it's not, okay, because it's not exact 30 days.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, and then you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I'm not always good at math, but obviously there's been some concerns from the neighbors tonight. I've had ongoing concerns for approximately 2 years now. I have several emails in my box, 17 stipulations that have to be met tonight. I'm not sure that everyone out here understands each one of them. I think that it needs to give us an opportunity to get our arms around each one of those and identify which ones hadn't been met in the first phase, which ones need to be met as the project moves forward, discuss the option of if a landscape bond makes sense or if it's just the requirements in amongst itself are enough. The reason that there may be a couple people that live in the neighborhood that aren't here is they sold their properties, and I think that they've sold them at a substantial loss. That is a concern of mine. I have no problem with intermixed usage of properties. I do want to address those situations. I think it's time. I've gotten several emails from them. I can share them with the rest of the council or pass them on. I think Patty's probably had several of them, so I think my continuation motion would be appropriate. And so we can look at these individual stipulations, give our police chief an opportunity. I think the crime statistics have been asked for, but I think the fellow that does that, Mr. Mayor, is out of the town. And I think that Marcia's been asked some questions and that she would need some particular time to study those and make sure that we have those concerns, as other aldermen have brought forward, available for us and give everybody a fair opportunity to address the situations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to offer a second substitute motion to continue for 2 weeks.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second substitute motion to continue for 2 weeks, and then you can talk to that motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that, in 2 weeks, if we need another 2 weeks, then so be it. But I think it would be good for all parties involved to not have a long continuation period. And again, Ron, if we get 2 weeks down the road and these questions still have been answered, we could look at another 2 weeks. But clearly we have a need for more low-income housing in this community, and we also have a need for addressing the issues that have been raised tonight. And I think 2 weeks is a reasonable time frame to have a comprehensive report. So I would ask for support on that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a second substitute motion. That is to continue the item for 2 weeks. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Say, Chief, just so you know, there was an email that went out with a map that actually had the crime stats. If you can probably find that and forwarded it. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. The map that went out only contained 7 major crimes, which is not a real good view of that area. It doesn't have things like vandalism and nuisance calls and whatever. So that's the.
We'll get into a little bit more detail on it. Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. Let's go on to item number 132, please.
Second reading of Ordinance 5595, an ordinance amending Section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Jim Lettner for rezoning from general commercial district to light industrial district on property located south of East St. Charles and west of Creek Drive. And my motion is for approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 133, please.
Second reading of Ordinance 5606, an ordinance amending Section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to low-density residential district on property located at 3010 South Valley Drive. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. This is second reading of ordinance number 5606, item 133. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 134, please.
Second reading of Ordinance 5608, an ordinance amending Section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Larry Nelson for a rezoning from low-density residential district to medium-density residential district on property located at 229 Lindbergh Avenue. And in view of what we did earlier, it would be best to continue this for 2 weeks.
Do we have a second?
Did you say second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item for 2 weeks. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcia, I'm going to be asking in a few weeks whether a plan development designation for this particular piece of property would be appropriate. So just to give you a heads up.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item for 2 weeks. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 135, please.
Second reading of Ordinance 5609, an ordinance amending Section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to low-density residential district on property located west of Elk Valley Road and north of School Drive. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. This is a second reading of ordinance number 5609. Any discussion on that motion? Excuse me. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 136, please.
An appeal of Planning Commission's decision on a request by Lamar Advertising for a conditional use permit to allow an electronic billboard on property located at 532 East Anamosa Street. My motion is for denial.
Do we have a second? We have a motion second for denial. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Patty Martinson.
Yes, I'll be not in support of this motion. I do believe this should be approved because they did apply for this before the moratorium.
Yep, very good. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I guess I'm with Patty. On the moratorium, what was the moratorium put on again? So everybody's on the same page.
Okay. Let me answer that, and then I'm going to make a point here is the fact that these two items actually were placed prior to the moratorium. The recommendation from the Planning Commission was for denial, and that had nothing to do with the moratorium.
Okay.
The moratorium had two things, and that was, number one, I asked that the council or that the task force take a look at the use of sign credits when they were either replacing a static board with a digital board or constructing a new digital board. The second part of the task force was dealing with reader boards, digital reader boards, and the showing of off-premise advertising on those reader boards. So,
Thank you. I guess I wanted that clarified. And what they're saying is this is already up. They just, if I'm correct, this sign is already,
one side.
yes, this sign is already up. They just want to put, there's a north face and now they want to put a south face.
That is
Am
correct.
I correct? So they wouldn't be adding anything else. And they also, based on approval, they want to take and, with the sign credits recommended by the sign committee, actually take some of their, I guess I don't know what the wording is, take some of their sign credits off. Is that the correct wording? And that's kind of what we're wanting people, or that's why we're putting the moratorium on, is because of that reason. We want to switch those. So it seems like they're, can I ask them a question to make sure I'm getting the right verbiage on the sign credits?
Yep, go ahead and ask the question.
Can you tell me about, on the sign credits, what you're going to do based on what we're doing for the moratorium to change some of these issues? What are you doing now on this sign based on those sign credits?
Doug?
Thank you. I guess what we're asking for is, we would even be willing to have you guys approve this with the stipulation of us surrendering sign credits based on their recommendation. So we would even, on the task force's recommendation. So if they recommend 2 credits, we would be willing to surrender those. If they recommend 4, we would surrender those. If they don't recommend any,
Okay, so
we would be fine
what you're
with that,
saying
but-
is on the stipulation, if that passes, but Jason, would that be legal to do that? To come back and say, based on the task force, that we can take these sign credits later?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
It's a very unusual request. My instinct is that it's probably not enforceable, whether you base it on the recommendation of the ad hoc committee or the ultimate determination of the council. And the reason I say that is because it's not in effect today. I mean, if Lamar is willing to surrender sign credits, I mean, they can do that, but I don't know that such a stipulation would be enforceable because it goes beyond the parameters of today's ordinance.
Thank you, Jason. I guess that's what I needed to know. Based on that, though, it seems like they have followed all the rules and regulations in order to put this up. They're not adding more signs, they're just putting a face on the other side. In a sense, it's putting up another sign, not another pole, and more issues, I think, in one sense. That isn't even the word I'm trying to use. Sorry, I'm just getting a little bit tired, imagine that. But my bottom line is they're just putting a sign on the other side of here. They followed all the stipulations in order to get where they are today. They put this on before the moratorium, and it's almost crazy, but on one, they put a variance, and now to get this up, and now they need a conditional use. So bottom line is I'm in favor of this. I don't think they're going to be adding any issues that we can't deal with on this sign that isn't already there.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think we ought to let the sign committee do their work, because we are talking about sign credits. And the relationship between sign credits and the rebuilding and the additional signings that go on in the community are directly related. And I think it would be really important to let that discussion take place in its full entirety, and then that would be the opportunity to make a decision concerning this sign. I think it's particularly important because I think Mr. Olson mentioned the fact that Coca-Cola will be assuming the responsibility of these two signs. And when that happens, it will be especially important that that we understand fully what is going to be happening to these two digital signs, because they are going to be the potential to have off-premise messages is very present on those signs, and it will become a part of their corporate decision-making in terms of what appears on these signs. And while I recognize that the sign that we're looking at here directly in Subway is a pretty commercial area, the next item concerns Mount Rushmore Road, and I always have concerns as this road project on Mount Rushmore moves forward. So I would urge my colleagues to support the denial, because I believe it gives us a chance to have a legitimate discussion about content, and it gives us a legitimate opportunity to talk about where sign credits fit into this whole discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I hope someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all the Lamar advertising went through all the rules and regulations that are currently in place. They're not asking for anything special request. I guess I can I pose that question to somebody, Mr. Mayor? I'm not sure who would answer that.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins. I believe that is correct. I believe the applications were in place prior to the moratorium.
The applications for these conditional use permits were in place prior to the moratorium. The issue came up before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission, while they discussed it, was advised not to consider the moratorium because that is separate, that goes to the issues of the sign permits.
Mr. Mayor, so they went through the proper process that the City Council has put in place? I mean, they
To
met
make the
all that.
application for the conditional use permit?
Yeah, I mean, for whatever they need to do to put the sign up.
Marcia?
They have for the conditional use permit. However, there is a moratorium, and I don't believe that we can issue the building permits, the sign code permits. Should you approve this CUP, we still would not be able to issue the sign permits under the moratorium. So,
Okay, so I have a question for Jason Green. Does the moratorium apply to this sign?
Jason?
The moratorium,
Signs.
the moratorium would apply to both signs. However, you're not being asked to pass judgment on a sign building permit. There's a prerequisite to getting the sign building permit, and that is the conditional use permit. That's what's before you tonight. So any issues that they have with the moratorium will have to be addressed after resolution of the
A
conditional use
separate
permit.
item from what we're dealing with. Okay, so put that aside. All the other conditions have been met, so they go through the entire process, and I have remnants of the casino thing that happened in North Rapid, and they went through all the processes. They came to the end, and they met all their criteria, did everything they needed to do, and then we moved the ball from underneath the shell. So I'd prefer that there was no billboards. I spent some time in the last couple of weeks in Portland and Washington and those places, and they're gorgeous. They have limited billboards, no billboards at all. But I also understand that the council's put processes in place to eliminate billboards, those types of things. These guys have met all the criteria to put up the digital billboards on the opposite sides of these billboards. I don't think that it's going to affect that billboard particularly. As we talk about this, it addresses the question that there's basically two sides of the billboard debate that's been ongoing for as long as I can recall. One side wants no billboards, impractical. One side wants all billboards, impractical. At some point, the council has to resolve this issue outside of moratoriums and say what is financially feasible for the sign companies to continue business and what makes sense to eliminate billboards. Because quite frankly, in the city of Rapid City, there's a lot of ugly billboards. And if I could trade those billboards for this one, if I had the power or was in this process, I would do it. There's no doubt about that. So I'm thinking at some point in time, the council and or the administration needs to get together with the sign guys and say, listen, we need to approach this from a practical standpoint that says, how can we eliminate signs and how can we achieve business balance? I think there's opportunity there. But I guess I'm getting off the stray and beaten path here, but understanding that you guys, I don't like billboards per se. I mean, they're not offensive in any means either, but you guys have met the process that was in place. I'm going to support the billboard going into place. Obviously, Jason Green has told you have another obstacle to meet, and that's the moratorium, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could, where's Marcia?
She's around.
Okay. Marcia, looking at, could you explain to me, like on the one sign, March 7th of 2008, they applied for and was given that permit over the counter. And then here just recently they applied to do the same sign on the other side, and we didn't approve that. My question is, what did we as a city do from March of 2008 until they applied to do this? What did we change? Anything?
Marcia?
The permit that was issued over the counter to change the permit to an electronic billboard was done in violation of the conditions of the conditional use permit. My understanding is that Brad Solon issued that permit under the advice of Assistant City Attorney Joel Landine. I'm not sure that Mr. Landine understood that there were additional requirements in the code for the conditional use permit. So the one on the north side, again,
was done in error, basically.
Was done in error.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'm with Ron Weifenbach. The process and procedure was followed at this point, and there already is a member of FACE on there, guys. It's just going to be electronic. So you're not taking down a billboard or doing anything like that. You're putting electronic billboard up there. And again, if people go through the process and procedures and then we come back and say, and I'm sorry, we got another step for you to keep you from doing this, I think that's not very good business. Again, I'm not in favor of doing a bunch of billboards and doing things that are cluttering in one sense, but you already have the face there. You're switching it to something else. You're not going to change it by the moratorium in a sense, and you're shutting down someone doing business, going through the channels. If that's not what we want to do, then let's eliminate sign code committees and different things that these people go through, because they went through and they made it through that process. Now we're going to tell them, nope, we have another process, and by the way, we have a moratorium with that permit that's not going to let you get it anyway. So that's what we're trying to say, guys. There's another step, and another step, and then they come up here following all the steps, and then we decide, okay, sorry, we don't like billboards anymore. Even if it's the business you're doing and you went through all the procedures, then get rid of the billboard committee and just have them come up here. Why have the extra step? It's not needed. Because we just come up here and decide what those rules are anyway. You have a committee that recommends, in a sense, and brings it forward and tells us that this is good or bad. And am I correct, sir, that this had came through the committee and they recommended that this, meaning the committee for the billboards, that this was, it passed. Am I correct?
No.
No, the current committee that the mayor has put in place?
The one that you went through in order to get to the planning commission.
I guess I'm misunderstanding that
They didn't
question.
have to go through a signboard committee in order to move this forward?
No, they went through
No.
Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommendation is that which is in your, on your agenda, and that was the
Billed
recommendation
because
to
of
deny.
the conditional use because of safety. Am I
Yes.
correct?
I think we'll ask Marcia as far as what the issues were.
My recollection is that there were issues of aesthetics and of safety.
Okay.
The Planning Commission's had several discussions over the last 12 months about the, some national highway studies relative to distractions to traveling motorists.
I did see some of those statistics, and it was the opposite, actually. I believe that when I read those safety concerns, that was incorrect. So based on that information, again, safety and aesthetics, then, again, why do we have sign permits and why do we do the things we do? I understand we don't want clutter and we want too much of something, I understand, but there's already a billboard there. You're not adding to, in a sense. They follow the rules and regulations, guys. If you want to shut them down, then start changing in that committee and start recommending things that you want to shut down at this point. So at least they're on the same page with us of what we're doing to their business. Instead of changing two things, just say, guys, you're cluttering up the city. We're trying to get rid of most of your billboards any way we can. That's the bottom line. So if that's what we want to do, let's put these guys on notice that's where we're going. Because I'd rather do that and be straight up with people that I'm doing business with than come back and make all excuses why we can and can't do something. You wouldn't want that done to your business, so why do it to somebody else's? That's more what I'm looking at here. I understand, like Ms. Reifenbach said about billboards, but this is a business. And if that's what you want, Rapid City step forward, City Council step forward, and put all the rules and regs on that moratorium to shut these guys down so they can't do their business anymore. Because that's what we're trying to say. And if that's what you want, be straightforward with these guys so they know where we're going. Thanks.
Say, Amber, what's the motion on the floor? It's been so long ago, I don't remember.
No, I have the motion is to deny.
Motion, okay, original motion is to deny, okay. Just for a point of clarification, the motion on the floor is for denial. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Terry. Terry, on your electronic billboard, your signs, one of the biggest concerns I hear is the animation. On yours, are they animated? Are they static to where there's no motion on them? They just, it's, what is it, 6 seconds?
Yeah, we say, I'm sorry. We say our digitals or our LEDs do not blink, flash, or scroll. They have a static message or an unmovable message for 6 seconds, and in 1/10 of a second, they change. Now, that's the South Dakota code, South Dakota DOT code also. So to answer your question, ours don't blink, flash, or scroll. And I think I can clarify this conditional use permit. Okay.
Put it this way, we'll come around to that, but
okay.
we have to ask questions. Lloyd?
Okay.
Second question on your billboards. Do you have a way of measuring brightness at night?
We have an eye on them, so they automatically change. The meter to regulate those is very, very, very expensive. If we do get complaints, we turn them down.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you, Terry.
Yep. Anything else?
No.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcia, does the City Council have, either you or the City Attorney could probably answer this, City Council have the ability, instead of a motion to deny, to offer a motion to deny without prejudice, which would then allow them to come back and reapply without having to go through the entire process all over again?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I believe that's an inappropriate motion.
Okay. I was going to say, if you're headed that direction, I just move to continue.
I would do that, but now I can't.
Yep.
It's odd. I would urge somebody else to consider doing that.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney. Nope. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. Someone mentioned that it doesn't matter what we do. If we were to approve this, that they couldn't be issued a building permit anyhow. So I guess the appropriate motion would be to put this item on the agenda immediately after a decision is made by the committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this. And Jason, do you have the exact date? I think it's probably, the first meeting will probably be the first meeting in June.
Mayor, I don't know what date that committee will come forward. I was going to suggest a continuance to the first meeting in June. If it comes forward at that time, you can take it up. If it hasn't come forward, then you can continue again.
Okay. Okay, motion on the floor is a motion to continue this item to the June City Council meeting, June 1st City Council meeting. Any discussion on the continuation motion only? Continuation motion only, please. Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Because we're continuing this, I would hope that people would come forward and bring some common sense ideas to the committee, because we do have signboard people there, and tell them their concerns in a sense that maybe we can find some solution in this instead of shut down and have people go in their business and think everything's okay till we go up front and based on interpretation, pick and choose what we think that day. We don't want that done to our businesses, so let's be up front. Any city council person or anybody else in the community, be up straight with this business and let's get this done the right way like we would any other business person. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the continuation motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The task force that we had in place has a time limit. Does anybody, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Do you know what that time limit is?
And that's what we're thinking is I think that it's going to be fairly close to the June 1st is about that first meeting in June. I think that it will be the time will expire. June 7th. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger. You want to do both, 36 and 37?
My motion was for 136 and 137.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for both items 136 and 137 to continue both these items to the first council meeting in June. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And let's see, Mr. Preston, the bill list.
Thank you, Mayor. The bill list totals $7,140,370.83. There are no changes or additions.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the bill list as published, which totals $7,140,370.83. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green, executive session?
Yes, for the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a motion, second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Going forward.
Yep, closer to midnight, turn into a pumpkin.
Second.
We have a motion, whoops. We have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 139 on the agenda is the confirmation by the council of the appointment of Mike Malteburn as chief of the Rapid City Fire Department. I would also ask that the council authorize the placement of Chief Malteburn on the salary scale at grade 27, step G.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 140 is the swearing in. Mr. Preston will handle that for Mr. Malteburn.
I, Mike Malteburn, solemnly swear I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
Very good. Chair, look for motion to adjourn. A motion, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.